Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna da Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube, and the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Hey, good evening, everyone. It is great to see you here on another Tuesday night, and that must mean it's time for Table Talk. And do you know what I just realized? I didn't brush my hair. I was just telling Brianna before we started that I needed to brush my hair, and I hadn't done it when we sat down, so I might have to go do that. But anyway, nonetheless, it is fantastic to be here, everybody, tonight. We are going to be talking about Arcane Season 2, Act 2, and we're going to be doing it with Brianna and Doug Burton. Channel favorite. Hello, everyone.
Heath, run a comb through your hair for crying out loud.
Okay, all right, I'll go.
Yeah, God, it's horrible, Heath. It looks terrible. Just kidding. Let's try to make Heath feel insecure.
Yes, well, that's right. I'll go. I used to keep a brush around here for that reason, but who knows? It's out of here. I don't know. We'll see. All right.
We're just messing with you, man. You look fine.
I don't see anything wrong with your hair at all.
How are y'all doing?
Pretty good. I'm a little bit more energized than I should because I had some coffee today.
Oh, whoa, Brianna.
I really do need to go to bed early, so we're gonna see about that.
All right. Well, that means this will take about 46 seconds to get through the Act 2.
Yeah.
There's not much to say here, but there's a lot to say actually. So I think, I mean, I've got lots of notes. I don't know. I don't feel like I need to start off.
Can I start off?
Oh, okay.
I was kind of thinking that
Unless
Brianna
you
should
wanna
probably start off.
What?
I was kind of thinking that you should start off, Brianna.
Okay.
I'll be listening. I'm gonna go get a brush.
Okay. Because I have a lot more notes this time than I did last time. And it was interesting because it was like I felt like I had this intense desire to rewatch this act, like as I was going through that I didn't necessarily have in the first act. So even though I wasn't bothered by the first act in the way that you guys were, I part of me maybe understands where some of that is, because I did feel like a shift in quality, and like, not that I thought the first act was bad, but like the second act was like perfection. It was like, yeah, I was very invested. And there was so much depth that I felt like that I knew while I was watching, like I'm definitely missing some depth. And which also makes me curious to see if I were to go and rewatch Act 1, if there is depth there that I'm just not seeing because there's like context that I'm missing. And so I'm really curious to go back and watch it all and see if like, yeah, if there's more depth layers that become visible on a second watch. But yeah, there's a lot that I want to say about this.
Right. So I was very vocal about my dissatisfaction with Act 1. I did not feel that the storytelling was up to par by Arcane's standards.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean if I never watched the show before, if I never heard of it before and I turned it on, I might be like, oh, what's this? The animation is really good. Maybe I would like it, but season 1 of Arcane was such an event, such a storytelling monument that when I was watching Act 1, I definitely felt a little let down. And Act 2 has completely restored my faith.
Yay!
That they know what they're doing. You could, Brianna. Now I did struggle with Act 1. However, I did not like the episode 4. I thought episode 4 was a little wonky as well.
Oh,
However,
really?
yeah, well, I mean, it was a better episode than the 3 before, but I still thought they were a little off. But man, almost immediately when episode 5 began, it was like someone flipped a switch and something happened to me when I was watching it, because one of my biggest criticisms are these throwaway style over substance, like music videos they were shoehorning in that did not seem to do much for me in the first 3 episodes.
But they're so cool. Sorry.
Well, they're cool. They're cool, but they're not. They were lacking the tie-ins with the story that were so essential with season 1. So what's weird is I've gotten to the point where when the story opens with one of these music videos, I'm like, ugh. But with episode 5, and we'll get into details, immediately the music video hit. It's with Vi. She's in like bare knuckle boxing. And there's this like real high intensity music playing. And I was like, this is different. Something's different right now with this episode. And I had no idea that it wasn't just a fluke, that this was going to sustain itself for the rest of the Act 2 at a very high level, by the way, in my opinion.
I skipped episode 4 on a rewatch. I rewatched 5 and 6 right before this stream.
Those are 2 incredible episodes.
I have so much to say about episode 4. It's so weird. Whatever. We can have different experiences.
Okay, well, let's start with
totally.
Let's start. You're gonna refresh my memory on it. I mean, I got notes here. This primarily about like what is going on. I mean, frankly, I still don't get it. So that's why I want you to talk about it, Brianna. So why don't you start where you want to start?
Do you want to share screen? I've got screenshots for all 3 episodes if we need them.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Doug put together some screenshots.
Yeah, just so we could have some context. And if you don't think it's working, you don't have to share it.
But if they go with what you're talking about, Brianna, I tell you what, I know you've got what you've got, Doug. Brianna, if you
Yeah,
get
so
some,
I feel like
we're going to start
people
talking, and
also
if
wanna
there's
see
something
our
that is
faces.
relevant, if there's something that's relevant that you know you've got Doug, bring it up because you can control what's
Sure.
up, and then we'll.
Okay. Yeah, I've
we'll
got
bring
like
it up.
50 screenshots.
Okay.
Yeah, so episode 4 was really fascinating to me from a character perspective. There were a lot of really interesting um, storytelling techniques that we've talked about before that I wanted to bring up. So I'm curious to know if you guys had the same experience, but I think a lot of audience members have felt differently about some of these different characters at different points. For me personally, Jinx, I've never been on her side. Like I've always been sympathetic with her, but I've always had a strong sense of like, okay, well, Jinx is clearly in the wrong. She's a murderer and all these things. And then, and I was always more on the side of like, Vi, I guess. This for episode 4, I experienced a profound shift in how I felt about her as a character.
About
And there were a bunch
Jinx?
of
Jinx?
yes, Jinx
Okay.
was that was when I was the first time completely on her side. And so I sat there and I thought about why that was. And there's a whole bunch of reasons. Like basically like if this character was introduced the first time in this episode, I probably would have felt about her the same way I felt about like, Captain Jack Sparrow, the way that he's introduced and the way you just like this really cool character that has all this complex history and a lot of layers. And there are so a whole bunch of reasons for that. And part of it is character development, right? I think up until this point, especially like all throughout, those latter 2 acts of season 1, Jinx has very much been in this wounded, vulnerable victim kind of mindset. She's the younger sister who's still, desperately wanting to prove herself, desperately wanting to, show that she's worthy and all this stuff. We meet her in the first act of season 2, and we can already see there's a little bit of a shift that's happened. And I think that's a lot more clear here is that she's not desperate to prove herself anymore. She's coming with a lot of strength. Like you can tell that she's kind of settled into who she is, for better and for worse. But it makes her a lot more like respectable as a character. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. So like there's the save the cat technique that we've talked about before. When we see her with that kid, Isha, like that was a huge part of what shifted because like this is part of what her character development has changed too. Up until this point, she's always kind of been in this younger sister role, even
Semi insecure.
yeah, very childish essentially. And this is the first time she's been the big sister. She's been the one, the caretaker, taking care of someone else who's vulnerable and young. And you see that it's first of all, it's a common technique, right? If you want audiences to like a character more, show them being kind or compassionate to, even if it's just like to an animal or whatever, like that makes us appreciate them more. And so that's going on. Also, the way that she talks about her own dark side changes. Like you see a little bit of some remorse in her. The way like there's some self-awareness. There's this time when she makes a mentioning to her murders in the past, but she talks about it in a negative way. Like this is something almost like this is a part of her that she used to be, but now she's this caretaker of this kid, and now she's not really living that lifestyle anymore. She's trying to hide away. And it seems to be motivated by wanting to keep the kid safe. But yeah, there was what was the context about that? Yeah, another example, I guess, I don't know if this was the same part, but there's another moment of self-awareness was like when there's that opportunity for her to, I guess, redeem herself, to become a positive symbol. And she's like, me, how fucked up is this place, like, so she understands like how absurd that is, and she has kind of a more accurate assessment of herself. Yeah, she knows that she's in the wrong, which makes her more sympathetic. And should I keep talking about these things, or are there any comments you guys want to make? I have a few more things about her, but I just wanted to pause for a second.
I was going to approach it more chronologically, but we don't have to, obviously. I was not
in a way, I think. Sorry.
I was hot and cold with Jinx in episode 4 only. She seemed a little off in the way her character was being portrayed. She seemed like she was trying to be Like it almost sounded like even like her voice was a little higher pitched, like she was trying to be childishly crazy in some of her dialogue. And it felt like they were just missing the mark with her a little bit. And from a writing standpoint, the things that I liked are the things that you're talking about. I liked her in the big sister role there. I thought that was very effective. In fact, in the animation there, it seems like when the writing is better, the animation goes right up there with it. The part with her that I thought was a little weaker was that she's withdrawn in all of this. You definitely
know. Not
you
only
don't
a little
want
weaker,
your
a lot
characters
weaker.
withdrawn. You want your characters engaged. And I know that I've had these arguments or discussion. I shouldn't say arguments, but I have had the debate that, it's great. Like Luke Skywalker in the last, it's great that he's withdrawn, that he's not involved in anything. This is good. He's reassessing things. And you can always find examples of this. However, your main characters, especially in the process here where we're getting going, I think should be forward deployed into the plot. I think they should be more involved. That doesn't mean this is an egregious error. I'm not saying this is an unforgivable problem. I'm saying it makes it a little weaker for me that she's like, this is the chick that fired the missile into the council, and now she's like, I'm retired. It's like,
I know.
The story needs you. Like, we need you doing something.
Yeah, but she has to go through this period in order to become the person that then can re-engage, because this episode is all about her re-engaging. You know what I mean? And like,
right.
So she's kind of.
Well,
I
wanted to see her engage. Okay,
she did. What are you talking about?
You're talking
That's
about
what this episode's all about.
You got to see her withdrawn to see her re-engage. Okay, first I want to see her engage. Then I want to see her withdraw. Then I want to see her re-engage. And I never got to see her engage.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
that was season 1.
She had a major.
It was not. It concluded. Season 1 concluded with "I am not powder. I am Jinx, and I am firing the missile."
Yep.
Now,
that's an identity.
I want to see her at full strength Jinx when she is running the show and she is taking no shit from anybody and she is full power Jinx. That's where this season should have started. Then she can get some other kid with her and withdraw and then decide to re-engage or whatever. But she only started the start of the engagement of Jinx was the firing of the missile. Where is Jinx? Where I'm thinking about the Joker. Like, I want to see her as the Joker. I'm thinking about Jack Nicholson's Joker in the original Batman, when like you get scenes where the Joker is full power. He is running Gotham City. He is at the top of his strength. I wanted to see that from Jinx, and I just never got to see it.
Well, refresh my memory, Brianna. Did anything really terrible happen to Jinx in episodes 1, 2, and 3 of this season?
Anything terrible happened to her in
like a major disgrace? Or is she just feeling remorse still from firing the missile from season 1? Like, what's causing? Because here's the thing. You do and can have with characters that withdraw, right? It happens. And it happens in real life. We have our low points. My issue is usually the withdrawal follows an absolute symbolic disgrace or a symbolic death or total disgrace of the character. She didn't really have that. She seems to be kind of wallowing a little bit. This is episode 4. So that would be 40%. No, that'd be a lot more than 40. We're in this enough to where
we're deep in this.
Right. And her firing the missile, I think Heath's got a point that was an identity claim moment. I am Jinx. I am starting this war. I'm going to bust this thing open so big that no one could put the pieces back together. Boom, fires the missile. That's a huge statement. So for season 2 to have her being like, I'm retired, I'm not really into this. It's like, then who was the chick who fired the missile? Because she wanted this. She was gonna blow this apart and start a war, and no one could put it back together. So I'm not saying this is egregious. I'm saying it seems misaligned a little bit with what they had set up. So the episode 4 here perpetuated some of that, and I'm like, let's go. What are you doing? I mean, you've got false flag attacks that's like fake Jinx
Mhm.
doing more than Jinx, which the characters are struggling with even in the story. So anyway, that's what I think he's trying to say that at least that I agree with. And I do also agree with you, Brianna, in that I did like, and by the way,
and I wasn't finished on my list. I probably should have finished my list so then I could let you guys go to your
No,
points.
go ahead.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
go ahead.
We're talking about different topics, but that's okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thought just then, Doug.
No, I was just going to say, I do agree with you, Brianna, that watching her deal with the younger child, who's a mute, by the way,
Yeah.
not easy to write a mute character because you get no dialogue. And as animators, you have to convey everything through expression. So it's a great challenge for an animator, I would say. And she's a child, so her range of emotion is going to be a little bit different, perhaps, than an adult might. And I thought that Jinx and her name, what is her name? Isha, yeah. Jinx and Isha, I thought played off each other rather well. And as we find out, this is setup. And we will get a payoff for this setup. And so this was done, the characterization there, the sisterhood that's forming between them, big sister, little sister, in a role reversal for Jinx, like you said, I think is done very well in episode 4 and was the most intriguing part about Jinx, in my opinion.
Yeah. So there were some other things about her that I felt like helped that shift and how she comes across as a character. Another thing was like we saw her change in having openness to potentially forgiving Vi, which is not something I was expecting. There's that moment where she's kind of talking to Vi, like at that chair where she used to sit,
Yeah.
And that monologue is really illuminating.
Well, I think she's talking to Silco, right?
Oh, is she talking to Silco?
Because she watched it twice.
Went to the chair, and the chair is empty. You're expecting it to be some kind of weird mannequin of Silco.
Right. It's an out loud dialogue.
I was even looking for the bullet holes in the chair, and they weren't there.
I have to watch it again because that changes some of the implications of that scene.
Yeah, she's talking to Silco's chair. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking to Silco's chair. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny.
Either way, she's understanding leadership more. What?
Yeah, he doesn't speak back.
Yeah, by the way, I wasn't that happy with that scene either because it's a dialogue issue to me. Having one character talk out loud. Now, Jinx is one of the few characters that could probably get away with it. Okay. But having a character talk out loud to someone isn't always the most effective way to get your point across, that maybe there's some vacillation on her part. And she even says, to our point earlier, that the really good quality sisterhood forming between Jinx and Isha, she literally says, I used to have a different name once, Powder. And I was like, she just said she just dead named herself.
Shift for her to actually say it, right?
Yeah, I was shocked that she said it because that name no longer has any meaning for me.
Right, right.
There's the idea that you are not that person anymore. So and she says it so casually. I was kind of caught off guard. And then she says, "You remind me of Powder," and I'm like, "Oh, don't say it! Like we get it. Like we all see it." So. Again, I felt that the writers were doing a little too much in the dialogue with her. Again, not egregious, but enough to where I was like, "Oh, we don't need you to say it." And it's odd that you would say it,
So some of the other things, we see her successfully play the role of a hero. Right. And so that's obviously a big shift for her.
Jinx.
Yeah, it's a big shift. And I liked how she kind of tried to play it off. She was kind of like disconnected, a little bit sarcastic, like when she rolls in, she's like, "Here I am, your big fat hero," because she's like, this is a joke, right? Like, no, but the way
mocking heroism.
But the way people react to her has a really profound effect on her. Yeah.
I wanted to know why though. And I felt like if I had seen Jinx at full strength in the war, when she was leading people,
yes.
then if she withdrew, when they were all captured, and then she re-emerges, re-engages to free them, and they're all reaching out to touch her and make sure that, that she's actually there. I feel like that would have had a lot more emotional connection if I had actually seen them be real emotionally invested in her leadership, which was conspicuously absent from this story.
Well, I mean, they were invested in her as a symbol. Like that's a big part of why she's not there active from a storytelling perspective, because it allows
then
her to
show me some of that. I mean, that's weaker.
There's so much of that. Like that was what that music video was at the beginning. Like
So I got a picture of the music video, Heath. So this is one of my issues.
I thought that part was so powerful. I got it,
and I thought it was very generic and hold on more. It was overly abstract and generic. Here's what my problem is.
No, disagree, but go ahead.
No, that's okay. And I'm sure you've got good points, Brianna. This is only my take. I tried to go back and figure out what it is that was irking me about some of the scenes, mainly in episode 4. One is something Heath and I both, I think, mentioned. Jinx is absent. So here we have this opening number, this like hardcore, we're anarcho, revolutionaries, we're going to paint the town blue. And that means, we're going to get our rage out. They're going to fight the system. But they're all characters we've never met, right? Jinx is not out leading these people. They're all it's just random generic shots of people angry, but with almost no characters that we know. And even when they show a character we know, it's like in passing, and they focus like all the face shots and all the focus is on these characters we've never met. Similarly, when somebody gets captured, they spend a lot of time beating up this person. I don't know who the heck this is. This is just like some random citizen, and they're like beating him, and they're like, you got close-up shots of and I'm like, these should be characters we know. We should have the lead characters involved in this, and these scenes might have more punch. But right now, it's generic and anonymous and abstract, and I think that weakens this. I think if you're really into like anarcho revolution, then those things would probably be awesome. But from a pure storytelling standpoint, I think your lead characters are missing from these scenes.
Which characters would you put in the scene?
What's that?
Which characters would you put in the scene?
Like Jinx. If you have the revolution going, they have like Savika out there trying to like rally the troops in front of the statue. I'm like, why are they putting her there? And
I couldn't figure out why Jinx didn't go to the thing. I couldn't figure out why Jinx didn't go to the thing.
What do you mean?
And then the little girl fires the blue flare, and we're all supposed to be like, oh my God, that is so Jinx-like. Oh my God, she's firing the blue flare. Oh, this is so symbolic. And I'm like, but why not have Jinx still? Like, why are all these other stand-ins doing all this?
We're leading up to it.
I know, but I think, it's like the Phantom Menace. Part of the problem with that is we did a lot of lead up, and it's just not as interesting as having your main characters engaged more directly and moving more into the conflict more directly. It's harder for me to get engaged in a scene like this where he's beating up a character I've never met than if he's beating up Jinx. If he's fighting Jinx or Savika or someone who's got a stake in this, I'm probably going to lean forward a little bit more in these scenes. That said, these are going to be fine if this wasn't Arcane. With Arcane, I just expect a little bit more. If this wasn't Arcane, then I'd be like, oh man. And let's say this started, I might be, who are these characters? But anyway. And by the way, this is only for episode.
Better with Bacon. Better with Bacon says, yes, I understand the chaotic nature of Jinx. Okay, so yes, that's what she's symbolizing. And Jinx is truly chaotic, as I said, firing off a missile and then giving up is very on brand for her. So that's it. So maybe that's it. She fired the missile, and that's what makes her a symbol of the revolution. But she's so chaotic that she doesn't even hang around for another few days. She just fires off the missile and then is gone.
I mean, that act of firing the missile was a very big like emotional expression too. Like I don't think that was something that was a calculated like I'm going to start this war. It was like it was a very
it's not an accident either.
No, it's not an accident. But I'm just saying, like I don't think she was like I'm going to lead a revolution. Like that's not her personality. But like that.
No, she doesn't have to lead a revolution. She doesn't have to lead a revolution. She can just be like chaos and be doing things.
A disruptor, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So Frederick, yeah, let us know what do you think we're missing. Please do let us know. I'll be monitoring the comments. The Titterpig Rancher Sable Phoenix says for $20, the biggest problem with this music video, everything is trying to. It's the biggest problem with this music video. Everything it's trying to show us, we already knew was going to happen when the rocket hit at the end of season 1. We should have gotten here with the first act or even the first episode of
Correct.
season 2.
I think that's correct. Right. These are throwaway scenes because they're not telling me anything I didn't know. They're not being like, hey, guess what? They're pissed now. It's like, dude, this is episode 4. She fired the missile last season. Like, I get they're pissed. I got that they were pissed in season 1, you know.
I think it was doing a lot more than saying that it was pissed. I think it was showing the like for me, this is the other thing I was going to say is that not only in this episode did I personally feel more in line with Jinx, and I have a few more reasons I'll say in a minute, but I also felt like, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but like for the first time I was really fully 100% with Zahn and like 0% with the Upper City, because all this, you know, police state imagery, I feel like is very real, really hits close to home. And it's just like such an obvious, like, okay, well, this is just authoritarianism at this point, you know? And like, you know, the only moral response is to resist something that evil. So, I don't know. That was kind of like a strong response I feel like I had to that. Yeah.
Burton, a lot of revolutionary leaders.
It was like using these, like a lot of imagery that we see in, you know, a lot of real life stuff, right? A lot of like, it's
right.
That's really evocative of elements of history and of modern day. But something else I was going to say on that. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I will stop talking. Someone else talk. And then
I will say this. You don't have to be a revolutionary leader to be involved on some level. A chaotic personality who's like hanging out and relaxing and all of that seems a little odd. Like you could say it's chaotic to switch your mind back and forth.
She's not relaxing. She's shifting her focus, and her priority is taking care of this younger kid.
Well, that could be too, but also there's
and then that came too early.
Right. Well, but it's also dangerous outside. So you still have to protect her from this chaotic world, partially that you're responsible for. Secondly, you don't have to be a military leader to be involved in a heavy way in the revolution. A lot of people fly solo. You know, I think of Lawrence of Arabia. He was kind of a solo act for a while before people started to follow him on accident. You know, he wasn't part of the British military, hierarchy. He was very small down the chain. So she could have just been doing whatever she wanted to do to disrupt and sow chaos in her own way. She doesn't have to be a military leader or part of any structure. To be completely withdrawn just seems to be the oddest choice for her character, in my opinion, and also from a writing standpoint.
She should be having some fun.
Put her on the bench.
She seems like she values some fun.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's
having fun.
Yeah, I still think this is supposed to be a shift for her. You know, a shift in priorities. I remember the other thing I was going to say, which is that this is also just showing her as a symbol, right? Showing how she's affecting the rest of Zahn. And so that's why we're a little bit more anonymous, because we're showing a lot of random people that are changing their behavior as a result.
But are they? I mean, they weren't like this before in season. They weren't angry, and there wasn't the tension. I mean, I felt like we built up to this a while ago, and you know, if anything, open with this, something like this, where, you know, Piltover's ready to start fighting and these guys are ready to start fighting. It just seemed like generic revolutionary imagery to me that didn't advance anything and didn't tell me anything new. That's all.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Brand. Do you have other commentary?
I have two more things.
Good.
I will say this: there's a great line that
we've been interrupting.
Right.
Finish your thoughts, Brand.
All right, so I'll just quickly review what I was saying before. So there's the save the cat element with the kid, showing her, you know, more complicated morally, like showing some remorse, potential openness. I guess this part isn't openness to potentially forgiving Vi, but I guess indirectly it is, because she's understanding these people that were, in a leadership role. Has the opportunity to redeem herself. I got a moment to be heroic. And the other two things are, we see her being a lot more like witty and funny too. I enjoyed a lot of, especially when she goes and is actually going to like rescue people. That whole sequence was like so much fun. A random example is the like middle finger she does with the smiley face. That was good. And then we see her being skilled on top of all this, which isn't new. We've seen her being skilled before. But here she's very confident, I feel like, in her skills. There's, again, less of that sense that she's trying to prove herself. She just kind of like she is Jinx. She is in this role. And yeah, it made me respect her more. And like, yeah, I respected her more and like was rooting for her more. Yeah, I think those are the reasons why.
I thought it was okay. I just didn't think it was great. I was still waiting at this point for the Arcane that I fell in love with in season 1 to kick in. This felt like a gear lower. And again, I think the issue for me was they're spending a lot of time with characters we didn't know as much. And another thing, like, there was that whole scene where Jinx disguised herself as an enforcer. And it seemed like that plan shouldn't have worked. That was like one step up, in my opinion, from Obi-Wan Kenobi hiding Princess Leia in the trench coat and like sneaking out. It wasn't convincing to me. And she got right through with no problem. And she didn't even sound like she was disguising her voice very well. So like, I don't know. I just wasn't quite buying into her yet in episode 4. But I will say this. There was a great line in this episode, and I wrote it down. It says, "Why is peace always a justification for violence?" That's a great line. And that came in episode 4.
Yeah, so I was very relieved to see that Caitlyn was not continuing down her villain path. Like we were saying last time, we're like, oh, is Caitlyn going down a villain path? No, she had a moment, but she's clearly here. She's also experiencing remorse. She's seeing the consequences of the road that she's started down. She's questioning Mbessa. And then only when I was sitting here kind of analyzing it, I realized a subtle little storytelling technique going on here. Is that the two characters, Caitlyn and Jinx, which are completely opposed in theory, are kind of thematically in parallel in this episode. So they're both,
they should have been,
huh?
They should have been.
Well, they are in terms of their character development.
They should have been in parallel.
What in what ways? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Because what I'm saying is they're parallel in the sense that they both have, to different degrees gone down dark paths, and they're both seeing the consequences of that and kind of having the opportunity to redeem themselves.
Yeah, my criticism. Go ahead, Doug. Then.
No. I got a good image for you if you want, but she's definitely questioning Mbessa. And by the way, I thought there was some good cinematography in this exchange between the two, but yeah, she's definitely questioning, but and playing it rather well. And this is a little bit more setup, by the way. So this scene was fairly effective, I thought. Is that what you were saying, Brianna? That
yeah, that scene. I was referencing that scene. Yep.
Okay.
And not only that scene though, there was also, I think, the scene with her. There were some earlier scenes with her too, where we saw her showing some hesitation in continuing what they were doing to Zahn. You'd be kind of wondering.
I would have liked to have seen what they were doing to Zahn.
Well, that's what you just complained about not wanting to see. That's what we saw in the opening.
I would have liked to have seen that. There were like just some words. I have the exact same complaint about Caitlyn that I just had about Jinx, and I said yes, they should have been in parallel, because as Sable says, Sable, we've talked about the central interrogation of this story. Credit to Sable here, being, can a monster be redeemed? And we had Vi create Jinx.
Mm-hmm.
Now we should have also had Vi creates Caitlyn. And yet when we left off last time, we're like, oh, so she's going to a villain arc. We're like, yeah, well, then let's see that. There were a few passing words that she said, it's been months. There have been, blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, so we should have actually seen your character order some absolutely horrific things going to war against Zon. Just like I wanted to see Jinx at full power, I wanted to see Caitlyn as dictator, like ordering some horrific things against Zon.
I mean, they did set that
And
up in episode 3.
Like, they didn't even show it. They didn't even deal with it.
Yeah, you're right. They skipped it, didn't they?
I mean, come on. And that's the duality. Vi would have created 2 monsters. And the central interrogation of the story is, can they be redeemed? Vi created Jinx, the chaotic element in Zon, and then Vi also created Caitlyn, the despotic dictator of extreme order in Piltover.
Why would it
And
have
I
been
wanted
Vi
to see
creating her?
both of those things.
Why would it have been Vi in this case?
Well, if I think
Because-
Judenfuss said it, Jinx probably created Caitlyn more because Jinx created the irreparable, fracture.
Yeah, she's the one that killed her mother.
No, it's
Killed her
because
mother. Right.
it's because Caitlyn and Vi went down to the Undercity with 3 objectives, 2 of which apparently were
Oh,
completely
because she
forgotten.
stopped her.
Okay, but one of them was to kill Jinx. And so they went down there and Caitlyn could have done it. And who is it that prevented ending it all? Vi. She chooses in that moment to go back on what she said. She said, if you have the shot, you take it. Then she stopped it. And then Caitlyn gets very upset about that. And I do want to talk about the gray because I'm not sure about that. And as a consequence, Jinx should have killed a lot of people. And then Caitlyn should be like, all right, listen, we went down there to kill Jinx. I had the shot. And Vi, you wouldn't let me do this clean. If I had killed her right there, none of this would have happened. But Vi got in the way. As a result, a lot of people in Piltover died. Now I'm going to do this the war way. And you needed to see that.
Well, and episode 3 ended very martial and militant. They had everyone banging their chest and everything. And Caitlyn, I remember she had that white beret and she was standing erect. She was ready to go to war. You're right. They didn't really show that war.
I was so keyed up for the episode of 3, the end of episode 3 in season 2, because the end of season 1, episode 3 is one of the greatest moments in all of television history. When Silco comes up to comfort Jinx, or comfort Powder to make her Jinx. Like that is such a pivotal moment. One of the greatest things ever shot in television. So here we are in season 2, episode 3. You're expecting something with just as much gravitas, and it's Caitlyn becoming a dictator. Does that have as much emotional impact? It does not.
Well,
They
counterpoint.
brush it away.
Counterpoint. If we see too much of her being a villain, we're going to lose empathy for her as an audience.
Well, I don't know. We forgave Darth Vader to some extent.
Yeah, but if the central interrogation, okay, so can a monster be saved? We need to see a monster. Like if you're going to be dealing with that issue. So the Titter Pig Rancher says the central interrogation is very hard to determine until the end. Can a monster be saved? It's only season 1. I don't think it applies to season 2. All right. Maybe
I don't know.
I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like I'll come back to that.
Act 2 has some healing the monster aspects as well, very strong.
Yeah.
It should have.
So, Titter
What do
Pig
you mean it should have? It's a huge part of what's going on here.
Well, and by the way, we should move to episodes 5 and 6, I think, in a little bit because
Well, I mean, is Caitlyn a monster?
Well, no, she's not a monster, but
they
she
kind of
certainly
spared her from that. The writers
Is
did, I think.
Jinx a monster?
Yeah,
Yes.
she fired a missile into the
She's
council.
a
chamber. That's
complicated
pretty-
monster. Yes.
Yeah, complicated. That's a good word.
Mhm,
Okay, in
mhm,
season 1, that was it. Okay, the answer was no.
mhm.
So is she a monster in season 2?
Well, I think that's changing. I think that's part of what's happening. But I mean, there's a lot that we're seeing in episode. I guess that's in episode 4 with her like interrogation and stuff like that. Like you see her that she's clearly in a different state morally than we saw her before. You know, she clearly doesn't have all the same virtues from before, but we also see in episode, you know, I guess, what was it, 6, that she's returning, she's you know, going back to her true value. So if we saw like an arc that was that extreme, I think it would be hard to pull it back. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like it would be hard to go to that level, what you're describing.
You can do it. I mean, you can do it. I mean,
do it. I mean,
it would
people love
depend.
the redemption of Darth Vader, and I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it would depend on how she feels about what she's doing, which would take a few episodes, and that's a character arc. That's what you're supposed to do. But they decided not to. It sounds like they built up to that, and then they just decided to go a different route. It almost feels like a different writer took over at some point here in Act 2. But I do think Heath is right in that they didn't deliver on the way episode 3 ended. They did kind of skip that, and they just kind of had Caitlin kind of reverting back to a more of a detective role, maybe.
I know you see her in a detective role, wandering around in where and she's always kind of skeptical about Mbessa. No, right? Like if she ordered like war against Zahn, you know, then like I wanted to see that, like, you know, because that's when it's time. Like, is that what happened? Then I want to see that. Is it answered? Is that answered?
I think so. I think the answer is going to be yes. So, and I have a lot of thoughts.
What was the answer in season 1? Was the answer in season 1 no?
I don't know if it had an answer. I think what he's saying is
Better what Bacon says. It was asked in season 1, and okay, it answered, but we have not done yet. So that's why I was saying.
I feel like that's what we're going to do. Let's come back to that topic though. But
okay.
I think that is
Better with Bacon for $5 says season 1 is the inverse. Season 2 is the inverse of season 1. Jinx has become a hero. The family is reunited after being disassembled. The interrogation changes to reflect this. So what's the interrogation?
I don't know what he means by the interrogation.
Well, she's become a symbolic hero. She hasn't really become a hero. She's purposely avoiding this path for some reason. She's sitting this one out for season 2, which is to me bizarre from a writing standpoint. But that's what she's sitting it out. She's learning to be a sister, and while this revolution is going on without her, I would say though that she has become a symbolic hero, whether she likes it or not, and that the symbol has kind of had a life of its own, whether she's participating in this revolution or not. I think there's some of that going on, but also I wanted to get to one of the major plot points that episode 4 really gets into, which is the emergence of this monstrous creature. Are we ready to talk about that, or did you want to say anything else?
Let me make sure. I think I've said everything about episode 4.
Because it's during this crackdown on the riots. What's that?
If I can just say one more thing about not on that topic of character relatability, but another thing that was a shift for her, because like in Act 1 we saw that she was like, she described herself as dead inside at one point. You can't kill me, I'm already dead inside, or something like that. This kid Isha is what changes that. So now she has a purpose at last. And it's only when she has someone to fight for and to live for. And it's only when that person is in sorry, I just got a notification on my phone. I have my notes on my phone. I just got distracted. It's only when threw me off. It's only when Isha gets captured that that is what motivates her to come out and to get into the fight, because that has become her purpose now.
So
right, like a surrogate sister.
The answer to the central question in season 1 was no.
That was certainly what it felt like it was leading us to. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Grudenfuss, it's funny how Heath complains how the show is not enough about the Arcane, but also complains they do not waste more time on Kate as dictator. I don't think I've even said the word Arcane as a reference to something other than the title of the series on this stream ever. So no, I have not
that
ever.
Sounds like a misunderstanding potentially.
Yeah, I think that's a misunderstanding, because I have never talked about how I thought this should be more about the Arcane. The Arcane,
either that or
as a subject of the story has not even come up. Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. Titter Pig for $5 says, I'm going to make a guess here with like 2/3 of the season done. The central interrogation will be something like, can symbols save us? Well, that could be interesting.
I like that. I like that question. I do think the way Act 2 has played out and developed, that it's getting far more complex, far more interesting. And so can symbols save us might be the early question. And by the way, as writers, Brianna, you know this, sometimes you start with a premise and then your story begins to create itself beyond what you expected. So it's very possible that the writers had this revolutionary motif planned out a little bit different, and Can Symbols Save Us might have been where they started. But as we've seen, Act 2 takes on a really powerful dimension, and that becomes a little less important. And I would say in a good way. I think what has happened in Act 2, which is astounding to me, and it got me. It hit me in the Arcane feels by the end of Act 2. Act 2 has really recovered what I think is the powerful storytelling of Arcane. And it's better than the quasi-revolutionary generic stuff they had set up so far in episodes 1 through 4. It's okay. It's just not as good as the storytelling we had earlier. And the way Act 2 develops, I think proves my point, at least for now. I could be completely wrong after Act 3 because we don't know where the writers are taking us. I do think that revolution is in the air, but whether or not they set it up perfectly with through 4 episodes, whether that was helpful or not, we'll find out. It could, I might change my mind, but Can Symbols Save Us, I think, is the starting point. But I think there's some new and central interrogation questions emerging. And it sounds to me, Titterpig, that we're going back to the original question. Can monsters be saved? If going by your framework, Act 2 ends a little bit closer to that mark. And I think the story's better for it.
Did you want to talk, Doug, about the Warwick in episode 4, or do we want to just talk about that in general? Or?
The what?
Warwick, who
yes, Warwick.
The father turned into.
Right. So throughout this chaos, they're cracking down. The enforcers come in. They're cracking down on the revolutionaries after the speech at Vander's statue. Savika gives this speech, and again, I think a miscast character. This should have been somebody else, but it's okay. It was Savika. She does okay. And then the kid fires off the flare gun, and we're going to get like that solidarity moment, right? They're all like, yeah, the Mockingjay, we're all in this. And then it's disrupted, which I thought was very good because they've been really heavy on the solidarity imagery throughout, we're on four episodes now. And this is disrupted, which I think is good. It throws a little bit it puts them on defense here. The spear goes through Savika's arm, it takes it off, and they crack down. And while they're cracking down, there's the alchemist in the crowd. He's bald. He's got the face covered, and he is cut in his hand. I don't know if they explained that or not, but it doesn't matter. He squeezes his fist, and the blood drops out.
I think he cut himself. I think he did that on purpose.
You're right. I think you're right. But the result is he lets this blood drip out from his fist. We get a lot of heavy camera work on the blood. But the blood seems to be the calling card for Warwick, or this monstrous beast, which is animated very well, it looks intimidating. He looks fast and ferocious, and this creature comes storming into the show, and wreaks havoc on everything. And I got a cool image there, and this is where I think we get Jinx coming back in. I got a cool shot.
You cool shot. Okay, cool. Here we go.
Yes.
So and now Jinx is engaged. Mm-hmm. My interest in this show peaked right around here, because I was like, okay, Jinx has something to fight for. We've got her back, and then look, the animation suddenly gives us a Jinx that looks familiar. You're like, that this looks like Arcane to me. This brought it all back, and he looks ferocious. And of course, we don't know what the story with this monster, but here's Jinx. This looked and felt like Jinx again. The animation felt like Arcane again. And I have one mini complaint. I don't like that they ripped off Alien 3. They literally, it's like same exact shot. Turning
ripped off. They're probably just, what's the phrase? Like,
Well, to be
homage.
fair,
an homage, yeah.
well, to be fair, I don't even know if it was an homage necessarily. I think that this imagery is archetypal. And I mean that in that you have a heroine, and it's a heroine in both of these images, and a beast is inches away, and the heroine is out of move. She's combat inefficient. She's not much she could do, but she's inches away from this monstrosity, and the monstrosity leaves her alone. That is archetypal. There's something about that proximity to something monstrous that the heroine survives that I like. So it may not have been an homage. It may have just been an unconscious repetition, which is archetypal. But it was awfully close to the shot in Alien. So
Yeah.
I had to point that out.
I feel like I give them some credit. I kind of feel like that they had to have done that on purpose, but who knows?
Okay, well, fair enough. These aren't, average animators. These are, high quality animators. So you're probably right to give them the benefit of the doubt. So, and I think that's pretty much how it ended, right?
Yeah, anything else on episode 4?
She frees prisoners, but that's more revolutionary stuff. And then, there was a false flag attack. So I think we covered that. And I think we should point out, Caitlin has a relationship. And I think this is important because as we get into season 5,
a rebound.
It is a rebound. It's obvious that it's a rebound.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think the rebound knows it, which is classic.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty horrible.
Right.
Yeah, but that's typical. That's normal. But it's important, I think, at least to establish that Caitlin is romantically involved with someone she works with in episode 4. And I think that matters because it does show that at least on some level, Caitlin is attempting to at least move on, which we'll address immediately.
I thought it was a symbol of abuse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because like to me, I loved it when Maddie sat up in the bed. I thought, oh, that's fantastic. Because I know that Maddie had goo eyes over her, and she's a much less mature character than is Kate, especially by the time she becomes a military dictator. And so, like, what's part of like becoming a military dictator? Like, well, the sexual benefits. So that, okay, Kate is now this, what I was thinking of as this dominating military dictator, vies out of her life. So, of course, she'd bring someone into her bed, this wide-eyed, naive girl who's like fawning over her. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, awfully affectionate.
Right. Yeah. I was like, oh, yeah. So we're talking about not only like military dictatorship, but we're spilling that power over into her sexual proclivities as well.
The only
that's
issue
why
is they
I love
didn't
that.
follow through. I think that's a great read, except that they didn't follow through.
They didn't follow up. But that's why I loved it when she sat up. Because if you had this powerful dictator and then you're like, oh, yes, I'm also sleeping with a naive girl who, the hot chick. I did love, yes, that follows completely. But they didn't follow up with it. Right. They didn't do it.
But I did love the body language because Caitlin in those romantic scenes, the younger girl, I forget her name. She's the other enforcer. Anyway, she's awfully affectionate. She's like in love, and Caitlin barely notices her in this scene. Like she's
just
how are we going to solve this crime? Oh, thanks. Like completely despondent. Except for maybe
I'll come back to bed. And she goes off to work, and
totally not emotionally invested. Let's put it that way. And the other girl clearly is emotionally invested to the point of like, right. This is the one.
If you're right. Because at that point, Kate should be like, "You're obsessed with me. Okay, I'll use it." Right? I mean, right?
No. If she did that, Heath, we would not be able to follow with that character. Like that would be a step too far.
I got the sense that she was willing to become romantically, or she's willing to sleep with her. And now this girl's like, "Oh, you're the best." She's like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah,
she's just
I think she's
dealing with
trying
this
to move
affectionate stuff.
on. I think she's trying to move on. She's trying to cope. And
Right.
that's like
Well,
her
and this
way.
happens in rebounds, right?
Right.
One person thinks that this is something more than it is. The other person's like, I just, I don't know if I'm there.
I
don't
know.
if I'm there.
When you're
So-
talking about
Her
Brianna,
heart
I
is
don't know.
still
I thought I was following a villain. I thought I was following a villain.
Yeah.
And at the end of episode 3, season 2, I thought I was following a villain. You're right. Maybe if they were like, no, wait, hold on, we can't do that. We cannot have her be a villain. We've got to make a villain would do something like that. But you're completely right. They may have said, no, pull back. No villain. They could have done that. And so that,
like I said, Act 2 it shifts, and I thought that it didn't shift, but once I got into, I almost can't wait to get into episodes 5 and 6. But it's worth mentioning. I think we talked about all the key plot elements of episode 4. So as much as I found frustration with it, I have to give this episode credit for setting a lot up. It did set a lot up. Now it abandoned, like to your point, Heath, and I think my point as well. It did abandon some threads. They seem to set up in Act 1. But I'm fine with that because now that I see what they're setting up here in Act 2, I'm like, let's go here. This is Arcane. This is good. I think the only other thing that's worth pointing out is how this episode ends. Titterpig said it a second ago. You've got this monstrosity, which is called Warwick, and it has the Alien 3 scene, and then it speaks. The beast speaks, and it says one word, powder. Mm-hmm. What a great end to an episode because it's an extinct name from a monster who shouldn't know the name because no one uses this name. It's a great way to end because we don't understand how that final scene made sense. And we now have to watch episode 5 to find out. Right? You think that, is there anything else that needs to be said?
I don't know. I'm kind of like feeling like I need to move on, but I don't want to. I
don't know. Okay, then we'll move on. I would.
No,
say
I want to make sure you guys get to say everything you want to say, but I also, like I was saying, have to go to bed kind of early. So.
I mean, okay. Then I want to make sure.
I am ready for episode 5
with that. Okay.
I'll just say this.
You can always go back and say more too when I'm gone.
Yeah, episode 5. Something happened within seconds. So. Right away, it starts with another music video, and my reaction to the first one. I'm like, oh, enough of these generic throwaway. I was like, okay, but it's Vi, and she's different. She's got her hair dyed black. I actually think Vi looks hotter.
Oh, I know she's so attractive in that episode.
I thought she was super attractive in this one.
I don't know what it was. Her eyes, I think.
Yeah, her eye. Yeah, she looked good in this. I really liked Vi. Anyway, it's Vi. It's not anyone else. It's not side characters. It's not secondary characters. It's not no characters. It's Vi. And she's in these boxing matches. And the way the animation done is very quick edits. She's fighting. She's getting beat up. She's stumbling home. People are guiding her home. Money's being exchanged. This is like debauchery. And she's clearly punishing herself.
Yeah.
And I thought this was freaking excellent. I immediately perked up and I was like, this is a good one. This is a good one. This is advancing her character. This is advancing plot. This is world building. This is doing everything that the music videos did in the past that I've been missing.
Yeah, we see her opposite form of cope.
But I loved it. It felt like if Vi was going to go into a self-destructive spiral, this is what it would look like.
Exactly.
Why is she punishing? Okay, if she's punishing, let's take that, Doug. Okay, then let's say this is the interpretation of her punishing herself. Why is she punishing herself?
Why is she punishing herself?
Yes.
Well, do you want to answer that, Brianna?
I think she sees herself like her role is to protect others, right? And that's something that she has continually failed at, especially in her own mind. And she's like completely alone now. She feels like she's failed on like all fronts.
Right.
That's her sense of like personal value and like how she perceives herself is just gone down into the gutter. There's just she doesn't have anything to fight for anymore. So she's just fighting to get her anger out.
They show interspersed between the raucous crowd and the smoky bare knuckle boxing rings, in between her practice punching, and they show her, there's aerial shots of her alone in her bed in different positions, getting up and hitting this punching bag. Like, it's great. It's great. We get a ton of information about who she is right now, what she's going through.
Yeah.
And there's 3 faces that are intermixed that are not part of the current moment. Powder / Jinx. Caitlyn, which I love because Caitlyn goes from a memory of Caitlyn to like a mirror image of Vi, where she's also like snarling and like self-destructing as if Caitlyn is Vi in the scene. It's a really cool mirroring. And then Vander, we get an image of Vander, and these are, to Brianna's point, these are all the people she lost and used to fight for. Caitlyn's no longer with her. That's why I think that romantic scene in episode 4 was important. It shows that Caitlyn is at least trying to move on. And if you're Vi, that might get to you. That might be ticking you off, and it clearly is. So all the reasons she had to fight for are missing. So now she's just fighting for the sake of fighting, and it's a self-destructive.
If she's punishing herself, to me, the obvious answer would be she's punishing herself because she didn't let Kate kill Jinx. Because at the end of the day, she went down there with the purpose, knowing that Jinx had to die. But then when push came to shove, she stopped Jinx from being killed.
I think
I'll just say that's a logical reason. But she's in pure emotional rage mode. Like she's in a, a depression.
Especially if, as a result of Jinx not dying, Jinx gets her ventilation deal off the ground, sends the Gray into Piltover. I think all this is badly done, but apparently a lot of people like died in Piltover or something. I mean, right? I
don't know.
You know, okay, because we talked about Jinx withdrawing after the missile shot, but she doesn't. Jinx goes into action immediately redoing the ventilation systems of Zaun, right? And I think this is badly done. That's why I'm actually asking this question. Jinx does not withdraw. Jinx knows that the Gray is being weaponized against Zaun because Vi says that directly. No, we're only using the Gray to clear the street. Right. So because we found out that a source of Caitlyn's power for her family is that they control the ventilation systems. And there's this Gray that is toxic because of the industrial capabilities and whatever. And there were the ventilation systems. And so because of that, and I do not think this was very well communicated at all, but apparently because at least my interpretation of this, because of Vi's words, is that Caitlyn and Vi have dispersed the Gray into Zaun in order to, I don't think kill people, but yes, get people off the streets, a form of chemical warfare against the people of Zaun, with the idea that, okay, if people are off the streets, then when we go in shooting, less people will die. I think that's what they were thinking, although that was never said. But I think that's what they were saying. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to, that wasn't communicated in her montage.
No. It's not communicated in her
montage. Is that she feels a sense of loss with Kate, a sense of loss of like permanent loss with her sister, and that she misses her father. I think that's what was communicated. And so this seems to be a deeper, more primal emotion of feeling alone and isolated. So I got to
because one more thing about that, because like her biggest role of anything is to be the big sister protector, right? So she failed on that level in her mind, right? And she created the monster. And it's almost like, I think if she could have gone and taken care of the monster, that would have maybe made her feel a little bit redeemed in that. Like, okay, like, I'm killing the one that killed my sister, but she wasn't even able to do that. Everything's still in the same situation it was. And even her, and she lost even Kate, like she's the one and the last person she had that she was kind of clinging to for the sense of like normalcy and stability. Also leaves her, and so she's just alone.
So Heath, you're right in that it's a poor transition from Act 1 for where we're picking up. However, I think it's on point for Vi. I think this is a recovery aspect of the storytelling where she's better this way. This is a Vi that I understand just watching as someone who knows the character, and it's a Vi that I could understand. When I talked earlier about the disgrace moment,
right. Why? But if you understand her, then why is she punishing herself? What is your one sentence? Why is she punishing?
because everyone that she loves and fought for has either turned against her or is gone,
And she
doesn't
feels-
have a purpose.
Yeah, she feels
she's rudderless.
It's partly her fault.
Right,
Because she does
and-
a lot. She takes things onto herself that aren't actually her fault in some cases. Sorry.
Yeah. And, this is more of the disgrace phase that I was talking about that I thought we missed from Jinx. That, a withdrawal usually comes
I don't know
from
about
a
that.
disgrace. And I feel like she's withdrawn in a way that makes more sense. Like this, she's not impressive in this. This isn't a feel-good montage. This is like, oh, dude, this chick's beating herself up. That she is not doing well. And yet you're like, we've all been there. We know what that's like. We know what that's like. And so I empathized with this self-destructive montage that she was going through.
I disagree with the idea that everybody has turned against her, because it's not like Caitlyn just decided to turn against her. It was because they went down there with the intention of killing Jinx, and then when push came to shove, I couldn't do it. So Kate reacted to that. I mean, Kate reacted, negatively to Vi, but it wasn't just that, oh my God, Jinx, Powder turned on me. Oh my God, Kate turned on me. No, she did things that caused that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you're right.
Those are things that I want her to fix in the story. I mean, that's what I
right.
think
You're right that they didn't address that. You're right. I think you're correct about that. That didn't bother me as much.
To me, that's what Vi has got to do. You have this one situation in this season where Vi makes the realization early on that Jinx has to die. And we're going to go down there and we're going to do it. And then a third of the way through the story, she can't do it. She stops the death. Okay, now she's got to do some self-reflection and figure out how do we, I was wrong. We almost did this. She almost died. I stopped it, and a bunch of terrible things happened. She's got to come to terms with this, and she's got to kill Jinx.
That would not be. I don't know. I just feel like that's not exactly consistent with her character and who she is. Like that sense of, like what I was saying earlier, like that primal sense of like she's a protector is really at the core.
But I know she's a protector, but as a result of her deciding to protect Jinx, she didn't protect anybody in Piltover, and she didn't protect anybody in Zaun, because the people in Piltover died because the Grey was released by Jinx, and then as a result of the Grey being released, Caitlyn became a dictator and killed a bunch of people in Zaun. So she's got to come to the realization that in that moment, I was Jinx's protector. And as a result, I caused a whole bunch of other death. And
it's
that's
interesting.
Extremely deep storytelling, if they had gone with that. Because she should have realized the death of Jinx could have prevented other people's death. And if I'm going to be a leader, I've got to think like that. Like, I think that's what is supposed to be there.
What's funny is I actually forgot about Act 1, how it ended with the Grey and all that.
Well,
so
it's weird.
I didn't bring that with me, but you're obviously pointing out that the transition from Act 1 to Act 2 missed some beats here.
It is
I
weird to me, because I went back and I rewatched that several times. And first of all, I don't like that it's an accident that that Jinx's ventilation things go off. There's some kind of weird accident or something. No, Vi should have stopped Kate from killing Jinx, and then Jinx throws the switch to kill a bunch of people in Piltover. But I don't understand. Like, I watched this scene several times when all of the multicolored gases erupt in Piltover. I'm like, I don't understand what that is. Like, I've watched that multiple times and I don't understand what I'm looking at. I think what I'm supposed to be looking at is the chemical warfare of Jinx putting the Grey into Piltover, but I don't understand why it's rainbow colored. It should be gray. If it were gray, I would understand exactly what I'm looking at, but it's rainbow colored, like, chemical warfare that she's putting in.
The good guys use nice colors.
Right. Well, I mean, okay, but so maybe I missed something where she's like, and here's this, and she's like plugging like colored gases into the ventilation system because that's her. But it would have been very obvious that's what's going on if it were gray. But I think that is what's going on. Maybe it is. Maybe I missed like her saying, oh, but I'm going to put my twist on it and I'm putting my own colored gases in there or whatever.
I do think it's implied.
Yeah, it's implied. I would say.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
it's
so
implied.
she
Like
gasped.
if I'm watching a Batman movie and then purple and green gas comes out.
Yeah.
I know
But-
who's up to.
But
good.
I'm just saying, you've called it the gray.
That's true too.
Like, you've made a point in your story that this is called the gray. So when it shows up on screen, I feel like it should be gray in order to make
that's a
sure
good
everybody
point.
understands what
That's a
happened.
weird name for that chemical.
Right. Okay.
Hey guys,
if
I
it were
really
called the noxious, then it could be different colors. But
Oh yeah. Well, and Brianna, are you going to leave?
well, I really hate to do this, but I feel like I need to ask if I can
Okay.
kind of quickly say
Go ahead.
the rest
Go
of my
ahead.
Oh
feelings.
yeah,
on
yeah.
that,
Please do.
so I
I
can go
really
to
wanted
bed.
to talk to you about all the stuff we liked or that I liked.
I know, but it's
I understand.
yeah. I don't want to like rush through, but I'm not
No,
going
go
to
ahead,
at
go
this
ahead.
rate. This is going to be a 3-hour discussion. I'm not going to be able to be a part of that for that long.
All right.
So is that okay? Is that okay if I kind
No,
of
go ahead.
quickly
No,
go through
absolutely.
the rest of
Absolutely.
my
Go.
I got
impressions?
some cool still shots for you. I'll try to match them up as she goes.
Okay, because episode 5 and 6 had a really profound effect on me.
I thought they were awesome.
Not just as a reader, but like also as a storyteller. And I won't say everything that I could say, but I'll talk about the basics basically.
If you need to come back, you can also do that, Brianna. We'll do another.
Yeah, potentially. So
We got next week too.
yeah, so the show moved in a direction I did not expect. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but I was very much primed for tragedy. Did you guys feel like you were being primed for tragedy? Like in season 1? Like, were you
I
expecting?
thought we were being
Yes.
primed for
I think this is
Revolutionary
a
War.
tragic show. Yeah. I would say yes, Brianna.
Like, you were expecting that we were going to get to some point where the sisters are fighting against each other and Vi has to kill Jinx or something like that. Like that. 'Cause that was where I was.
I did. Yes, I thought that they were going to be on opposing sides of a civil war, in essence, and that this was going to be very action-packed warfare, anarcho revolution against a collapsing civilization, high civilization, and we're not there. But what we're getting now doesn't matter. It's so good.
Right. And so when there was this moment when I realized this show is not actually going in that direction. This show is going in the direction of redemption, because I was so expecting it to be tragedy that when I realized this show is moving, it was an emotional gut punch. Like it hit me out of nowhere. Like if it was a kind of story where I was like, oh, I'm expecting it to have a good ending, but I wasn't. And yeah, I mean, that was really powerful. Like, yeah, those two sisters coming together again. I was not expecting that. I thought we were going to see them opposed for a while, and I thought it was a really clever way to bring them back together. Because, like I said before, like there was a point where it was kind of like I was very clearly morally more on Vi's side, but here maybe not necessarily morally, but like when they come back together, it's like these characters are equally a mess for completely different reasons, but they're like these are two characters that are a mess. And
they have there's a great line that underscores that. Vi goes, she's like, they're talking about Vander, and she's like, why? So you could tell Vander would be disgusted with you because he would just see what a psycho his daughter's become. And she goes, which one?
Exactly. That's exactly a really good point. That whole argument between them was such gold. Like that whole like big sister, young sister dynamic was completely gone in that moment. And they were two adults, like they were very much two people that are very much established in who they are, for better and for worse. They both were very, equal in terms of their power and in terms of their fucked upness,
Heath, I got a still shot if you want it.
Okay.
And they'd also, like Jinx had yes, this part was fantastic. It very much had the feeling of, two estranged family members coming back and having an argument. It felt very raw and authentic. And like part of them becoming equals is because Jinx was kind of going up, like she's starting to find her humanity again, and Vi has gone down. She's gone down a bit of a dark path in this sort of hopelessness and violence and rage. And she's also, I think, started to lose herself in terms of her role as a protector. And this scene emphasizes that too, because there's that moment again. It's like we're thinking about like who Vi is, like in her best form. She's using violence, to to protect vulnerable people. When she's in her worst form, she ends up hurting vulnerable people. She ends up hurting the very people she's supposed to protect. Like she hurt Powder.
Yeah,
you
she
know,
kind of backfires.
and that happens in the scene with Isha, and that's a very like that moment is just so thematically powerful because we're seeing like I think that's a moment of self-awareness for Vi as well. It's like, oh, this is what happens. This is what happens when she's disconnected from her own soul, I would say.
Or when she, she's becoming her desire to protect just shifts to pure violence.
Mhm.
She loses control of it, and then someone innocent gets hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And so Isha is kind of helping them both find themselves a little bit here. And then I just loved how there's these shifts that start to happen, right? We see Vi protecting Jinx in this episode at one point. And she in this scene, this sequence, she protects her from Vander. And that's why she goes to go fight him. And then of course, when those three joined in a hug, that was when I was sobbing. I was like, oh my God, I did not think that they were going to repair their relationship, that was the direction this show was going to. That was like peak Arcane storytelling right there. Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Doug. You muted yourself somehow.
Oh, you are muted, Doug.
Oh, so that I would shut up and not interrupt him. This is the importance of having your lead characters forward engaged in a story one way or the other. We care about those people. We invested all of season 1 in those people, and we're willing to follow them even when they go into a downward spiral. We're willing to go watch that happen and be like, oh, don't do that. Or when a bright moment occurs in this dark world, you're like, oh man, this is what a payoff that is. I felt a lot of emotions watching episodes 5 and 6, which were completely unexpected because I was not on board with this show to the same extent. It was okay, but it had not hit any level that was engaging me to the same extent. And then suddenly, while I was kind of like this, suddenly I'm like, oh my God, like I'm into this show. And I was getting teary-eyed when some of these bigger moments happened. I thought it was very important. But to me, it underscores why the earlier episodes weren't as effective. And it also is reminding me as a writer to get moving on the main issue, that don't spend too much time in setup. I'm having some of the same problems, by the way. It's made me look at my story and be like, yeah, I'm going to have to take out these chapters and get moving, man. This is, people want to see the lead characters forward engaged, whatever that looks like. They don't want to see them on the bench. So we don't, and they're not on the bench in episode 5. And their hearts are on their sleeves. They've got this new character, Isha, who Jinx of all people decided to be a protective person toward. They found out that Vander's still alive, and Vi doesn't even believe her, right? Brianna, she's like, you're fantasizing.
She thinks it's a trick. Yeah, like it's because their first meeting is very interesting too, because it's like she just sees Jinx. She doesn't see at all that Powder is starting to come back.
The tear. They stop fighting because they're fighting each other when they first meet each other. Jinx just kind of appears. And then Vi's kind of got her up against the wall, but Jinx, a tear comes down, and that's enough to make Vi consider that she might be sincere if she's willing to cry over this. Right? Jinx isn't a crier, right? I mean,
I hate
enough to stop Vi in her tracks.
I hate to keep doing this. You guys, I'm going to hand it over to you in a second and go into all sorts of depth in episode 5. But I just want to say very briefly some of my thoughts in episode 6 and like kind of a takeaway that I had for both.
All right, go for it.
So for episode 6, we get our shift with Kate and Vi again, which of course, I knew that was coming. That wasn't a surprise. But I did like how they handled that. Where when they meet each other and they're like, what are you doing here? And Vi says, I'm trying to save my dad. And that was an instant moment of connection, right? Because Kate has just lost a parent. So she understands emotionally. That was a moment where we didn't have to say a lot. Like we very quickly understand what's happening with those characters then. And then the moment when Jinx defends Caitlyn. Now that was an interesting chip. I gasped at that moment. I was like, oh, and that was when I was realizing I was like, oh, maybe these characters are all going to be on the same side. That was literally the last thing I expected out of this show. Was that we were, and I think that's where we're going. That we're going to have the lead characters that we're all invested with, all being, for Zahn, which is really, really exciting. Yeah, and we see, the shifting. I always note the moments of shifting characters because just as a storyteller, things that I'm very interested in. Yeah, Jinx and Vi have a moment of saying, maybe we could stay here. And she holds Jinx back from the explosion. So it's just these little steps of, coming back together. I would love to say some stuff about the Arcane and the religion stuff, but I'm gonna not. I'm gonna leave that to you guys. But I'll say
if you've got something to say about that, we can come back another night. We don't have to be Tuesday. We can come back another night. I'm okay with it.
I'll just say very, very simply, because that's really important to the theme here, which is we're shifting into healing. Like there's that Doug, you've mentioned before to me, the I'm talking too fast.
Sacred Grove
archetype, which was definitely at play here. This a place of healing, which is what these characters need, right? They all need some goddamn healing. And that thing that we got, the I guess monologue, I suppose, from what's his name? Victor, about motions of humanity being two sides of the same coin, love and hatred. And we cut to Vi when he says love and hatred, we cut to her fighting, which was like, yes, it's exactly right. We're talking about the two sides of Vi, right? When she, because there's so much of there's a lot of duality that's going on in this story, which could be.
Well, the quote, and it ends episode 6. That which inspires us to our greatest good is also the cause of our greatest evil.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a statement.
I know.
That's a great line.
Yeah. So having that surprise shift towards redemption and healing and all that had a very profound effect on me creatively. Just making a quick side note. You guys will both understand which story I'm referring to, but I had a passion project story that I'm working on for some years that I've been planning to be a tragedy. And I'm starting to change my mind about that, about how the story needs to end based on the way this affected me, because it was like, it's hard to put this into words exactly. I realized like unexpected redemption is so powerful. Expected redemption is just kind of like, oh yeah, we kind of expected to go. But when you're like going into the depths of like the darkness of the human soul, and you're primed to expect a heartbreak, things get as dark as they possibly can. And then then what does that say? What are you saying about humanity as a storyteller if you go to those depths and then you say, and yet we can still rise above that? Like that had such an impact on me, and it has made me fundamentally think differently about how I want to approach a certain story, which you two are both familiar. Yes.
That's awesome. And it's interesting because episodes 5 and 6 confronted me with my writing and made me rethink my, I think I mentioned at least, how I wanted to keep the conflict and lead characters more engaged.
Mm-hmm.
That's less profound than what you're talking about, though. I really like what you're saying, and it just goes to show that, it doesn't matter where you are on the writing spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
you can always learn from great writing. And I do think that episodes 5 and 6 here gave us some great writing, and it was great. It was great to watch,
Mm-hmm.
and it was great to feel like Arcane's got more for us, that they're not done with us yet. That they're going to be able to hit peak levels again. And now I can't wait for Act 3. I am ready to go for next week.
Yeah. Heath, is there anything else you wanted to say about all that before I head off and leave the the rest of the discussion to you guys? I'm
Well, there's a
sorry.
lot
Ascend
that I
into
wanna say
Zon.
about that.
Sorry, what?
I mean, there would be a lot that I want to say about that, but I don't know what. I mean, I thought the reunion scene between the two sisters was horrible.
Horrible.
Wow.
Why?
Yeah, because when I watched season 1, which was one of the most emotional seasons of televisions I ever watched, when Jinx decides to pull out that flare, the blue flare, right? And I'm like, oh my God, because at that time you just want these two sisters to be together. Please let them be together. And she pulls out the flare, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I mean, how absolutely emotional impact that was, the outreach to her sister to please come. And then you get and she's not there, and then all of a sudden she is there. You're like, oh my God, this is it. We're gonna be. And then the lesson of that scene is that it's irreconcilable. And that's also such an important punch, that you got the emotional punch of the outreach of Powder Jinx in that. Please, can my sister please come? And you get the moment, well, maybe she doesn't. No, she does. And then you get the realization that the system, that this situation is irreconcilable. To have those people, to have her show up in a mirror and say, hey, hey, our fathers, the idea that you would do that you would undercut the absolute one of the most emotional things that have ever been put on television, which one of the other was Silco embracing Jinx, talking about how these two are irreconcilable, and how every emotion that you felt, that you're going to get such an absolutely unemotional scene in that fighter pit cell when they show up. I thought that was unexcusable. I thought that was
fire
terrible.
pit cell.
Well, whatever, it's in her fighter pit cell where she's sleeping. She's a pit fighter, and she's sleeping in like that little one room thing, right? And then Jinx shows up, and it's like, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna bring those two back together and you're gonna reconcile them, you better damn well make sure that hits me emotionally 10 times more than they're split up. And
I'll
I didn't even
agree.
feel a thing.
I mean, it did for me, just not that scene. It was like, when they finally reconciled, I guess.
Well, I will agree that I did note that the reunion was extremely underwhelming. However, it was Heath, you got a point, but the story moved on and they re-engaged at a new level enough that I was moving on with them, and then I forgot about that note, and I kind of got caught up in their new drama. And the fact that Vander's alive is kind of a game changer in this act.
It's the only thing that could possibly bring them back together, right? Is having family in common.
Well, I'll say this. So the archetype of the sacred fire is one of the most important things that has returned by episode 5. And remember, sacred fire is both your individual cause, the flame that you hold, but it's also the continuity of your identity from your native culture. Where you came from always matters. It's really hard for characters to completely not care about where they came from. Usually their family and then their culture. That's all missing until Vander comes back in the picture, because Vander restores something of that continuity, the communal fire that both Jinx and Vi share. And so his return to this story restores a sacred fire of sorts. It gives Vi a renewed memory of her identity, who she was when he was around, and it restores some of Jinx's. And it's very clear that Vander's presence in this story has restored this flame, and that both of these sisters are responding to the restored flame with that continuity possible again. It's the idea, maybe we're still part of something. We were part of something with Vander, and then it all went away, and now this world's gone to hell, and on two different sides. It's like, but Vander's back. It's like, well, that changes things. We're still part of this thing that we thought was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So the sacred fire is important because it has such a powerful impact on identity, both individual and the identity that you come from. that was handed to you when you were born. You know, you didn't choose any of your past, your culture. You didn't choose any. It's there. It's handed to you. So that's part of your identity. And that had a powerful impact in the storytelling in episode 5 and then 6. That was just one take.
All right, I'm going to leave the rest of this conversation to you guys. I know you'll probably talk for quite a while more because there's so much more depth to this.
It won't feel the same without you, Brianna. I'm not going to lie.
I'm sorry.
No, we understand.
I have to be an more early sleeper these days. Now that I'm a super early riser, so
yeah,
is what it is.
Well, we understand, but you will be missed. That's for sure.
Yeah, I may not necessarily always be in this position. Like if I go to bed really early, the night before, if I go to bed really early on Monday, then I can stay up a little bit on Tuesday. But I didn't quite do that yesterday, so I want to make sure I get up tomorrow.
Right on.
All right. Well, I will see you guys later.
All right. Thank you, Brianna.
Real quick.
Yep.
10 out of 10 for episodes 5 and 6.
Oh yeah, I would say so.
And what about 4? Was that a 10 out of 10 for you?
Yeah, it was for me. I didn't have issues with it the way you guys did, but
okay,
yeah.
Awesome. That's what I was just curious.
Yep.
Thank you. That's all. I don't want to hold you up anymore.
Sure. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night, Brianna. Well, that is very interesting. So it sounds like Brianna had more of a straight through, no problem from.
Yeah, I know. I was very glad that she was coming in to say this because when we'd been text messaging back and forth and things like that, I know that she also was very much liking Act 1 and she very much liked Act 2. And the more I thought about Act 2, the more I just don't get it. So, but that's possible that I just don't get it. So, I mean, that's
well, you haven't brought up bad points. Like your points are solid points. I will say that I had actually completely forgotten about Act 1 in terms of the gray and like there was so much that I forgot because I didn't think the storytelling was that great. And
well, I mean, I would have to go back and rewatch it. And
here's your points are good that if they cared about those plot lines, then they should have treated them better in Act 2. My point is, I don't care. I'm glad those plot lines are gone. And whatever they're doing now, I'm kind of on board with. But
we only have 3 more episodes.
Right.
To conclude this whole thing. Because here's the thing I was thinking about. Is there any consequence from Vi becoming an enforcer?
No. I thought it was awkward when it happened. Everyone was defending it. I thought it was weird.
Right. We're talking about great arcane storytelling. I mean, here we got a situation where the enforcers represent everything that has what's the word I'm looking for? Oppressed Vi.
Right.
Her entire life.
Right.
Okay, right. They're the impressors her entire life. And now here we've got a situation where she could join them. Arguably, that should be played up more. But even if you're not going to do that, play up the choice more, her actually going and doing it, the result of that choice has to be there, that she's now a traitor to Zahn.
Right, right.
When she wakes up in the fighting pit, why is she in Zahn? Can she show her face there? Doesn't everyone want to kill her? Isn't she a traitor to everything that she had? Even if she tries to explain, I was trying to kill Jinx and whatever. I mean, doesn't she have to explain that? Is she in the fight? Can she show her face? Is that why she's trying to disguise her tattoos? Because she has betrayed her people? Is that something?
Well, I think that the face paint was a couple things. I think it's like war paint. I also think it's face hiding. I actually read a lot about the psychology of shame. And in the psychology of shame, there's very distinctive body patterns and habitual patterns. And one is to hide the face. This is an immediate cross-cultural reaction to shame, is to hide the face. So when you start smearing paint on your face or rubbing something off like makeup, if women have makeup and they violently rub the makeup off, that's a shame reaction. So I took that as a mixture of war paint and shame when she was putting the black paint on her face. If we were effective, I could see if you were waiting for them to follow through on episode 3, I could see why you'd be disappointed. I think I got lucky that I forgot about episode 3, and I when I let off into this, I was fine with it. Like
It seemed to me,
fine to me.
it seemed to me like where it was going when Vi was unable to go through with killing Jinx, which needed to happen, and then as a result, that ended with a lot of death in Piltover and in Zaun. That Vi would be homeless. She can't go back to Zaun because she's betrayed them, and she can't go back to Piltover because she's also betrayed them. She's homeless, and she's going to have to do this herself. To me, that her story arc would then be like, okay, I tried playing with Zaun, I tried playing with Piltover. The only thing I know now is that Jinx has got to die. And I've got to come to terms with how I didn't kill her before or let her be killed before. Now I got to go handle this situation. She's got to get her mind right, and then she's got to go for that. To me, that's the story. But apparently, like I said, even her becoming an enforcer isn't even something we need to talk about in the story.
Well, I thought that was not effective storytelling, having her become an enforcer. Here's the thing. If people like a show, they'll defend it. They'll defend whatever it does. My goal is always, is this the right use of the kid? So there's always why is that bad? She could do that. Like I always think of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. People are like, it makes sense. Of course Luke could do that. It's like, of course any character could do anything. Of course. My issue is this a good use of that character? Does it make sense, or are you starting to clash with other things? And you brought up some great points with why that might be problematic.
Yeah. Right. I'm thinking, when I was looking at that, I was like, going, okay, did she have to swear an oath? Is she now some kind of officer in that? Okay, now are the enforcers, do they now look on her as a deserter? And that's why she can't go back to Piltover, because she's a deserter, and, deserters from the, enforcers face death. Is that the death penalty or something? Whatever. What's the penalty for being a deserter from the enforcers once you've joined? I don't know. That sounds like it could be interesting storytelling, but it's just not something we're not even dealing with.
Right. To me, you could throw out Act 1. We don't even really need it. I feel like the real powerful storytelling is right here in Act 2. Even the problems I had with episode 1 at least set up multiple payoffs, by the way. There's a lot of setup and payoff in Act 2. And so episode 4 does do the work of setting up several things. And by the time you get to episode 6, you get some great payoffs, some great heartbreaking payoffs. Yeah.
The Titter Pig for $5. The Titter Pig Rancher for $5. Thank you very much, Sable. Says, I mentioned on Bacon Stream, all the weaknesses of Act 2 were direct continuations of Act 1's. Act 1.
Great point.
But it happened. I mean,
yes,
if we were looking at this from a script writer before any of this was animated, we could fix this. But
here's my attitude on that, Heath. Am I willing to hate good writing in episodes 5 and 6? Am I willing to give up on episodes 5 and 6 because they didn't set it up right in 4 episodes that I didn't like? No. I'd rather grab a hold of episode 5 and 6 and be like, this is what I'm here for. This is why I'm here. This is incredible storytelling. This has me off balance. It has me off guard. It has me emotionally invested. Like, I am willing to forgive the sloppy baton handoff from Act 1 into Act 2. I'm willing to forgive it, as long as I have episodes 5 and 6 as good as they are. I would rather not keep trying to reconcile episodes 5 and 6 with Act 1. I'm willing to forget that. And I think that's, it sounds like you're still like, if we take them serious with Act 1, then they shouldn't have made the shift in episodes 5 and 6. And I'm saying, but I'm glad they did anyway. I'm glad they dropped the baton and just started this new storyline with these characters, because this is what I really wanted. I almost feel like season 2 should have started with the end of episode 3. Marshalling occult arms in Piltover. Marshalling the forces for full-scale retaliatory action upon Zaun for what they've done. And with Kate leading the way. Let's do this. And then Vi and Jinx are stuck together on the same team in Zaun, whether they like each other or not. and then you can move right into this story. But anyway, they didn't do that. And to your point, they didn't really follow through on the invasion of Zaun.
They did not. Okay, there are some other things I can say here. But do you want to go to what Titterpig says here? We could go here. The best scene of the season so far, though, was the flashback to Vander and Silco in the last drop with Vi and Powder's mom.
That's the restoration of the sacred fight, because now you're going back to her origins and the origin of both Jinx and Vi together. Both heroines share this communal sacred fire, the same sacred fire origin. They come from the same people. They come from the same place. Yeah, there's a still shot for you.
I'll bring it.
When episode 5, is it episode? Yeah. When episode 5 goes into this flashback, my heart started to completely break because I don't remember, was the mother in episode season 1?
You might have seen her dead on the bridge.
Anyway, we get to meet
season 1, episode 1?
Yeah, so when they go back first, we see Vander. So first off, I'm a little off balance that Vander's even alive. He's in this monstrous, hideous form. And by the way, he fits the archetype for the beast as ally, right? You know, he's a perfect beast as ally. And they even refer to him, the beast has come for you. They actually use the language. They also use the language of Labyrinth, which we can get into later.
Yes.
But he's the beast as ally. And he comes storming back into this story. And he looks hideous. He's a monster. He's a beast. And then you get this flashback, which is a complete contrast to this character's total humanity. He's passive, he's calm, he's gentle, and he's sitting across from his wife, which is Jinx and Vi's mother. And there's just something about
his wife. No. That's not his wife.
But it's he got her pregnant though, right?
No. That because he says it's what Caller or Connor or whatever, because he says, "Have you told Connor?" Which is her like lover.
Oh, but I thought it meant that have you told Connor it's his?
Connell. Right.
That's what I thought it meant. Because she's obviously coming to Connell. And anyway, while this exchange is going, there's obviously a lot of compassion between Vander and what's her name, by the way? The mother.
Don't
know. Well, and while you have this compassionate exchange at the last drop, sitting in the background, almost minding his business in the scene, freaking Silco, scribbling something down like a musician, you know. So it's a powerful, powerful scene, and it just hit me right in the feels when this flashback occurred.
I did also, especially the character of the mother is also very, very well animated. There's a lot here. There is a lot of emotion there. It had never occurred to me that Silco knew them.
Felicia.
I thought this. Well, yeah, it does. It recontextualizes everything I thought to the worse. Because
really?
Because in season 1, episode 3, when Silco goes to comfort Powder, I had always contextualized that because he's the bad guy and he's found a way to manipulate somebody new. I never thought of that is because he knows that girl's mother and he's doing so. He's trying to step into a fatherly role because he knows the girl's mother.
Well, I would say that this recontextualizes it for the better. But my thing with Silco is at the time that scene happens in season 1, episode 3, Silco, I don't think he's thinking about Vi and Powder and all that. I think he is Silco in full. So even when that confrontation happens, there's still the sort of, you know, hey, there's some real evil in the world and I'm here to protect you. I don't feel like he was trying to seduce her to get back at Vander directly. I still feel like that was a secondary motivation, that the way he was responding was still as a villain to an innocent person who just experienced betrayal. which is his like source code as a villain. And this is his chance
there was
to be like a mentor.
Was there anything in season 1 that made you think that Silco had known Powder before?
I still don't think he knew her. It sounds like he might know that there's a baby about to be born, but I don't think he knew Powder or had any sort of pre-existing relationship with her.
Yeah, I think this works better if there's not.
If anyone in the chat knows otherwise, help us out. But
I think this works better if they're okay. So clearly, Vander has to experience loss because that's one of the first loss due to the war. Okay, and that's because he talks to Vi about that. He says to Vi, "Who are you willing to lose?" Because Vander is unwilling to fight the war because of what it's going to cost. Who are you willing to lose? So that does establish the idea that in his backstory, when he had tried to fight, he had lost someone important. I mean, okay, that does make sense. But when he's looking at the carnage of the bridge, which am I right in saying that Silco instigated that? Am I right in saying that?
That Silco instigated what?
The carnage at the bridge, which resulted in Vi and Powder's parents' death.
I did. Yes, I did assume that.
Okay, so that's what I thought too. So then there we go. And when he's looking at the situation, like I got these dead parents here, what do I do with these children? I think it would be great to have him have that realization in the moment and not be like, oh, I'm responsible for these children even before that happened.
Well, I'll have to go back and rewatch season 1.
Better with Bacon says Silco and Vander instigated.
Yeah, I mean, it was an ongoing conflict. And Vander, remember the way he was portrayed early on in season 1 as kind of an old guard warrior who was trying to settle down in a way and run a bar and raise his daughters and still be a father figure to them. And yet there was the battle was pulling him in. They keep pulling me back in. He kept getting kind of pulled into it. So Silco and Vander were still, I think, very much at odds with each other. But I never got the sense that Silco was deliberately trying to like target Powder for like to seduce her to come to the dark side. I have a feeling that was more incidental contact.
Yeah, I would have made that. Yeah, we're not told why, but we do know that the bridge assault is what caused Vander to try to kill Silco. Didn't Silco throw like a Molotov cocktail or something like that? That's right.
I don't know. I got to go back and rewatch season 1, which I'm very excited to do.
Because I mean, I would have thought that was the idea that okay, so we got this situation, we got the consequences of this. Vander wants to stop fighting. Silco wants to continue, so Vander decides to kill Silco. Like that, but I think the seeing that in the moment, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird that Silco to me has a personal connection to Powder before.
Well, not to Powder, to Vander. He had some connection to Vander, not to Powder. Powder, I don't think he knew much about Powder, if at all.
I mean, he's sitting right there when the mother is coming in and having.
Yeah, but if I'm sitting at a bar and a girl's talking to some guy and she's like, "Yeah, I'm pregnant," I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, that child," like I'm not thinking about. I'm just like, "Oh, she's pregnant." Like I'm not even thinking about.
Well, then
9
why
years in the
there?
future. What's that?
So you don't think that this conversation was impactful on Silco?
I didn't say that. I'm saying that it doesn't establish a relationship with Silco and Powder.
Okay.
I'm saying that relationship has yet to be defined. I don't even know if they even met. He met the mother, but I think that the power of this flashback is more to show that there was some truce or some level of camaraderie between Vander and Silco. And it was also, I think it was doubly powerful because Silco is the villain of season 1 and a villain that we kind of sympathized with on certain levels. He seemed to have a code. He does certain things that we like out of villains, and we get to see him again. There's something refreshing about a story that reminds you of its characters like that. So anyway, I like this scene. I thought it was fantastic, and they redo the scene in watercolor in episode 6.
I think that I think that this seems like something that is intended to have some emotional impact on the characters that are there. And if she's talking about, you, Bozo 1 and Bozo 2, specifically referring to both of them, including Silco.
Right.
You have to get this right, this thing you call Zahn, for the sake of my child.
Right.
If it's not intended to have an impact on Silco, then I would not have had him in the scene. Just have Vander there. And then do it. So if you need to have some other scene with Vander and Silco, do that. But I kind of feel like the way that this was framed, it was like, oh, so Silco feels some kind of responsibility to this woman's children.
No, I feel like it was more like these are the two godfathers of the conflict that we met when we started this story. Silco and Xander. These are two of the big players of Zahn. Here they are, and here's a woman in between them, right? And she's saying, make the world a better place. I mean, she's tasking them in this very innocent moment at the bar. She's like, make the world a better place. And what's horrible about it is while we see this rather idyllic moment in the tavern, we know that these two just completely failed at this task. They did not make the world a better place. They've destroyed the world worse off than it ever was before. And we even understand a little bit why on both sides. So it's one of those. I think it's a great scene because it shows an idyllic moment before something is obliterated. And you have these two characters here, and they're both innocent in this scene. And I think having the presence of the mother figure, and not just any mother, but Vi and Jinx's mother, it just adds a powerful presence into the ethos of this conflict that we didn't know existed. That there was a directive from this woman to make the world a better place, and that these two had failed. So I don't know. I thought this was really good stuff.
Well, I think you could have that without trying to recontextualize, as the word was in the chat, recontextualize Silco's actions in season 1, episode 3, which I saw as very manipulative, very evil.
Well, I think it's,
and you're recontextualizing to be reaching out to the daughter of a woman that he spoke to in a bar. Weird.
Except here's where I'll push back on some level. It felt manipulative at face value, but as we experienced the story expand in all of season 1, I definitely got the sense that Silco really cared about Powder, or Jinx really cared about her, really served as a father figure. There were several scenes where she was dangerous and he ignored her as a threat, almost being like, if I'm going to die, I'm fine if she kills me, but I'm not going to be afraid of her. You can almost see that those gears turning in his head. I got the sense that Silco really did care about Jinx, and that's what kind of made him a villain you could sympathize with, because he had something he cared about. He had some level of code. That's why we like The Godfather, Vito Corleone, because he had a code. Silco had that code, so whatever manipulative appearance his behavior had, ultimately he stood by the reality. It wasn't a lie that he really cared about Jinx. And Jinx, nothing I'm
saying goes against that, because I agree that as the show develops, clearly I think that that Silco does have very genuine feelings of affection for Powder. And
you're saying at the onset.
At the onset, at the end of, when I'm looking at that scene that is so one of the most emotional things I've ever seen on television, the end of season 1, episode 3, when he goes to hug her and bring her in, I think I'm seeing a lot of manipulation and a lot of evil. Oh my, like he could have just killed her right there because that's kind of what you're expecting. Like this, and instead he's like, no, well, you know what? I'm gonna bring her into all of this.
I still love that scene. That scene
then
still stands.
And then when you're telling me that yes, and then as it goes on, as you watch other episodes, I do think there's a genuine affection between that Silco has for Powder. And it undermines it if I'm thinking the reason that's there is because he knows her mother. I think it works best if it is an affection that Silco ends up having for Jinx and not an affection that Silco has for Jinx because he has some kind of connection to her mother.
But I think the core relationship, isn't Silco and the mother, Felicia. I think it's Silco and Xander. So I still think that any manipulative sensibility he may have had was towards Xander, not Felicia. And I think that sensibility went out the window once he actually met Powder, the person. He really did become a father figure to her. And, you could kind of understand, he shot right here. He's the other dad in the room. They both raised this woman's.
Oh, did we lose Doug or have you lost me?
You there?
Oh, yeah. The Titter Pig Rancher says, oh, yeah, we may have just phased out for a few seconds. The Titter Pig Rancher for $10. Thank you very much, Sable. Thank you. Says, there's something about the Love is Bourbon fountain song, too. Not this lady, not this song. I do love that line. You, too, need to get this song thing figured out. So intriguing. The scene is all subtext. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot to like about this scene. I like I said, my problem with it is I don't like how it changes how I think about what I was seeing in season 1. But no, this was a fantastic scene. I love her animation, all of that, and like
Heath,
I said,
are you there?
The way she danced. Yeah, I'm here. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Am I freezing up on you?
I saw you freeze a couple of times. I'm not sure exactly what's been happening.
I have all my bars.
It feels like Heath watched a completely different season 1 than I did. Okay.
Well,
maybe
it's possible that Heath is taking the storytelling as given and still bringing that through as a through line, which is perfectly fair to do, by the way. I think what happened to me is I recognized a shift in storytelling in episode 5. And so I was quick to drop whatever was frustrating me before in order to appreciate what was clearly superior storytelling in episodes 5 and 6. And now by default, I could see some decent storytelling even in episode 4, where some of the payoffs were set up in episode 4, even if I was still frustrated by the episode.
I mean, I want to go ahead and say this, but I'm holding out until to Act 3 to finalize this thought. Okay, but I want to go ahead and put a marker down right here.
Yeah, and I think all of us should do that. We don't know the end.
So here's the marker that I'm putting out. I don't like that Vander's back.
Oh.
I hope, because I don't like the hugging. I don't like the, oh my God. I hope that when they're saying that his mind is gone and that he's never coming back, if you're going to do this, I really hope that's true. Because I feel like this is rerunning something. Okay, so we had in season 1, I don't like rerunning plots unless it's a situation that the actual characters in the story are supposed to pick up on. Like we got a cycle of violence, we got a break. Like if you do a cycle of violence, the characters may see that and need to pick up on that. But I'm talking about, I don't like rerunning a plot. We've already had a situation where Vander came in as a monster to save Jinx and to save Vi and Powder. That was
like Monster Light compared to.
I know it's like Monster, but it's okay. But it's still the idea that all of a sudden he's hopped up on all these drugs and he comes out and he is gonna go. He's gonna go kill Silco, and then he realizes that Vi is in danger and whatever, and gets them out. We've already seen that on screen. And now, okay, hey, let's make him a bigger monster and let's have him show up and get powder out of the jail, and all that. I'm like, you've already done this. You've already done this.
Except that his presence coming into this storyline has revitalized it. So if he comes in and it felt like shoddy storytelling, then I would be very irritated. But when it works, then you got to. My rule is always, why is it working? And my answer has been because it restores the sacred fire aspect to both Vi and Jinx. That's why I think it works. And I was going to point out, we have this flashback sequence, which I believe restores the sacred fire, the origin, the source fire of our two heroines. And the next scene is fire symbolism. It's got Jinx holding the torch, moving around in the darkness, like immediately. So probably by accident, right? I think these things are subconscious if I'm interpreting them properly. But if it's true, then you have fire symbolism immediately, and it's by Jinx holding the fire. And she waves this thing around until she finds out what's going on in this tunnel. And then there's the hugging scene you didn't like.
Yeah. I was like,
which I liked.
Going on?
I liked it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I don't know that the return of this person from the dead is, Gandalf did it, but that was the OG.
Well, but Resurrections, by the way, and this doesn't have anything to do with the hero's journey or the heroine's labyrinth. There are multiple other archetypal designs that seem to appear, and Resurrection is one of them. Neo does it at the end of Matrix. Gandalf does it. Obi-Wan Kenobi does it. Like, it happens a lot. I just watched The Dark Crystal, and Kira comes back at the end. So, like, the resurrection, the resurrected characters are not uncommon. I do think there's archetypal reasoning for that. I think we as human beings have a tough time letting go of people. And in our stories, they get to come back. And sometimes they come back to great effect, and other times as a cheap ploy. So far, I feel like this has been to great effect. But it sounds like you're a little bit more on the cheap.
I really hope this, that's why I like the hugging scene to me is I hope I wish we didn't have that kind of thing, because I think it would be a fantastic subversion of that kind of trope if they thought that maybe he was there, but he is also completely gone. That you realize that he cannot come back, because we have you're talking about what's the only thing that can reconcile these two sisters? Family. We've talked about that, except for their father is dead. And so, yes, so that's a very powerful message. The only thing that can reconcile these two sisters after that is if their father comes back from the dead. But that's not something that happens. So why would we put that in? So the Titterpig for $10 says, if the hug scene had been at the end of season 2, episode 3, the monster restored to life, the family reunited, as an inversion of the end of season 1, episode 3, the monster dead, family broken, it would have been peak storytelling. I completely agree. I completely agree with this. I completely agree.
I don't disagree.
I would be more accepting of this if they had done that, because then you would have had, because I really wanted that season 2, episode 3 to hit really hard emotionally. They went with the Kate becomes a dictator thing. I think you're right. If you're going to pursue this storyline, I completely 100% agree with you, Sable. Put that at the episode 3 mark. 100% agree.
So just to back you guys up on this, this is what I'm talking about, where you make too many structural errors early on in your story. You are now stuck with that, and it starts to affect the rest of your story. So those first 3 episodes, now that I see where this is going, are really more and more and more unnecessary. Now we'll see how it ends. Maybe Act 3 ties it all together in a brilliant way. Who knows? But right now, I don't even see the purpose of Act 1. Everyone was saying that it was absolutely necessary to show, a dead stop, remorse, grief for, a long stretch. And I disagreed with it. I disagreed with it then because you don't have conflict. You should have did a time skip and gone right to conflict, because that's where your story is. Now, anyone could come in and make a case, well, it's important to show this and it's important to show that. The people who say that you have to write it. You have to be a writer. You have to try to do that and see if it slows down your story. Now, Brianna is a writer. So, when she says it, it's like, well, okay. But I think that you don't need to do it. Or it seemed like the one thing that Brianna and I were starting to agree on were perhaps it was a poorly timed moment to try to tie these things together because it's leading off season 2. So there were so many structural problems. And now that I'm seeing where the real secret center of gravity is moving, I feel like I was right that they did not set those up. They wasted those episodes with garbage setup.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, and I think you could be right. Two different kind of modes of analysis here, because to go back to what Titterpig was talking about right there, the way they are structuring the story, the end of episode 3 is setting the tone for the entire. The story is setting its theme up. It's saying what you're going to do, and so because that was in season 1. I mean that Silco's embrace of Powder at the end of that was so emotional and set the whole tone for the whole rest of everywhere we're going, which turned it all on its head and sent it where it was going. So when I saw, okay, we are ending with Kate becoming a dictator, that to me really defined where I thought the story was going. It turns it on its head. She was such a nice girl. She's going on a villain arc. We're turning this on its head. We're going in this direction, dealing with the creation of another monster that Vi has also created, and how we I understand there was some difference of opinion in the comments about who created Kate as a dictator if we're going that direction. If this was going to be a story about family redemption, then I think Titterpig is completely right. Put that as your final scene of episode 3. That's what I think. That would have redefined what the story was. That would have redefined what the story was.
Right. So what's weird is I think we're more in agreement than we all think. I believe that were this written correctly, more economically, more efficient, more to the point, putting the conflicts front and center. And by the way, conflict, everyone needs to understand what conflict is in terms of writing. It's relationships. Relationship between Zaun and Piltover, between Vi and Powder, between Jinx and Vi, between Silco and Jinx. All of these relationships is where you find the real invisible power of conflict. And what they were doing before was the standalone, I'm grieving. There's no relationship there. You're just watching characters be like, this sucks, I'm mad. And, that's less interesting than direct conflict. So I think if they moved right into conflict, if these writers here that we're watching now, I know it's Amanda Overton and the crew, I think if they started with Act 2 or at least the end of episode 3 with the invasion of Zaun, I think that these themes would have worked. I think you could have had the peak storytelling that Sable's talking about, where you actually have some parallel structure in terms of where the themes or inversion of themes are appearing in each episode, in each season. You could have done a lot with parallels. So again, I just think that they wasted way too much time with this revolutionary throwaway that hasn't really done anything. Now, we'll see. Act 3, maybe it flips all this on its head.
I mean,
maybe the revolution comes and we're all wrong. It's possible.
I don't know how much you have to say, but I mean, here, and of course, we were talking about whatever thing, but we've talked for over 2 hours about what I think are the central aspects of this show and what it's trying to say and what its themes are and its central interrogation and stuff like that, which I think has been a very productive discussion, even when we have disagreed. But I think it's very telling that there are things that we haven't even talked about. And in the fact that we haven't even talked about those things, like, I don't even care about the Black Rose. Like, I mean, my one note about Black Rose is like, what is this? And this doesn't make any sense. And we are way too deep into this story to be wasting our time. Like, Kate, Jinx, Vi, those are 3 core characters that I think are trying to articulate our story with our theme and our central interrogation. And then I got a bunch of other stuff that I don't even understand.
The Black Rose. Yeah.
And we are way too deep. I mean, and I think it speaks volumes that we're able to talk for 2 hours about what's been going on and not even bring this up, because to me, I mean, it's just, I don't even understand it. I don't know. What do you think about it?
Well, there are some. I've always had a problem with overly abstract storytelling, and this, unfortunately, even Act 2 has some of it. The Black Rose is a little ambiguous. It's hard to understand what's happening there. I will say, however, that archetypally it matches up with the Poisoned Apple very well. It changes the conscious state. You have the disoriented heroine, and it is a heroine once again. And it's to capture her. It's to be captured. So archetypally it's sound, but it's really hard to follow and hard to understand.
Yeah.
Secondly, there is the utopian world with Victor as the new Messiah character. I'm not sure I'm completely sold on that either. It's okay. It works in some areas, but you get this sort of demigod world where these characters, like he's existing in space. You always lose me a little bit when you get a little too esoteric and a little too abstract with your storytelling. It's not that it can't work or that it never works or anything like that, and it's not that it's not effective here. I think it's somewhat effective here. It's okay, but it's certainly harder to follow because we don't know the rules. We don't know what's going on with these guys.
We don't know that. Yeah, we liked Ambessa being set up as a villain in part 1, Act 1, and I mean, I agreed, but I'm just looking at this and I'm going, what is the central story that we're trying to tell? And it seems like by Act 2 here, we got a lot of ancillary characters. Maybe it'll all turn around, but I just feel like things like, yes, understanding the way the Utopia works, the Black Rose, I only got 3 more episodes. I mean, we are, what is this? It's not even, I guess there'd be 12. So it's not 33% of the way through. It's like, what, 16? We got 16% left, after 2. And just for all of that to be so ambiguous, I mean, just have her die, and then that let us focus on, in the missile strike. And then that way we can get back to this understanding of relationships and the monster aspects or the symbology or something. And a lot of this just seems to not be going anywhere. Could be wrong. They're still in Act 3, but I mean, it's telling that you can have a 2-hour conversation on more than 2 hours of conversation on Act 3 and not even touch on whatever it is.
Right. I don't know. It's a structural issue to me. I think you said the positive is that there's so much to talk about, and we haven't even covered, several of the plot lines. I think it's because the other plot lines were all really out to lunch because they're so ambiguous that I'm not even necessarily positive what the conflict is. And I always think that that's a mark of bad storytelling because it's almost like they're trying to bait you into thinking that there's a mystery here. And I'm like, I don't think you know what you got. I don't think you're ready. I don't think you have anything for me.
If we were at 20% of the way through the story, then I'd still be okay with I don't know where we're going. But we're closing in on the end 16%, or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, I've read, so I'll read short stories and, chapters and stuff from in my writer circles and everything like that. And you can always tell when and I have to catch this in my own writing, when an author is being ambiguous and they try to leverage ambiguity as mystery.
Yeah,
that's usually a problem.
That's an excellent point. Ambiguity is not mystery. But Jordan Fuzz says Mel could not die in the missile strike. Her innate power is the point of what the Black Rose is after. But I don't care about what the Black Rose is so ambiguous. I don't understand. And the only reason that I know that there could be something that is magical about Mel is because there's somebody on Reddit who was talking about, like I was talking about, who was mapping out everybody's position at the time of the missile strike, and perhaps Mel would use some type of magic to protect her and Jace. But I mean, that's really ambiguous, or that's very ambiguous, I guess you would say, or okay, there was somebody on Reddit, and if you've read this thing on Reddit and have been diagramming out their positions, then you might think there's something magical about Mel. but otherwise, it's not like I picked up on that, and I've rewatched this a few times. The whole thing twice, and then rewatched different parts. But yeah, she does say labyrinth. She says labyrinth.
Well, and the imagery on the back wall is labyrinthine. There's a secret door in this room. There's a poisoned apple in this room. So there's a lot of archetypal elements that I recognized immediately that are present and semi-effective. In fact, I would say most of these scenes are carried purely by the archetypal purity of the images, but the storytelling is a little off. And I will agree with James Bacon. He said it's not bad storytelling; it's just way too rapid writing. I would just say it's not to the same level across the board. I think we were so spoiled in season 1. We had pretty superior writing you looked under a rock and there's a story going on there, and it's a great story, and you want to know what's going on under that rock. Here, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. We are at least recovering the core, which is Jinx, Vi, Vander. I think that's the core. And I think that is where the strength of the show resides. So you can get away with some you probably don't remember, but they actually rushed some things toward the end of season 2 last season. They started rushing some of their scenes. Forgivable because you're trying to wrap up a season, but they did rush. Here, I feel like they're almost taking, believe it or not, James, I'll say it's almost the opposite. I feel like they're taking too long to build out something that means so little. I think that's the problem this season has had to some extent, at least in Act 1.
I understand, Drew and Fuzz, what you're saying with the because they do come out and say that later that, there's been some child of Ambessa's that is magic and all that. I mean, but that said, was that episode 6, season 2, something like that? Like if I wasn't okay, they do just come out and say that. I mean, they actually do that a few times, which I think is the telling rather than, they do that with Ambessa's background. Oh, she's lost a bunch of stuff and had to give up holdings and things like which you never really see. So no, they do come out, they do say that. So I picked up on that when they said that, but I only connected that to potentially things that came on earlier because of, analysis, that's
well, and I'll say this too.
And ever picked
and
up.
This has to be said. Were this any other show, I don't think I would care enough to analyze, even in my harsher criticism. I just don't think I would be as tough on this if it wasn't apex level storytelling in the first place. This isn't just another animated show. This is one of the best. So when they set that bar up there, they're asking guys like me and Heath and everyone here in the chat to treat it at that level, to engage with it at that level. And when we engage with it at that level, if we feel something's missing, then you're going to start hearing from us because this is what this show is supposed to be. So it's good that it's, even in falling short, it's only because they aimed high and hit that mark. And that is hard to do ever. So they did it, and I do feel that there was a lot of recovery in Act 2, Season 2.
Well, I was thinking about this when, all today, basically, as I was
James.
Today, and because, and of course, and Drew and Fuzz had said, "Oh, well, now Heath's just a hater." Well, no, that's not what I'm trying to do here, and I thought about that a lot today, not in exactly those words. But as I was trying to put together some notes and things like that, and I was like, I don't want to just not like something because I have because I had tremendously high hopes for this show. I had tremendously high hopes for House of the Dragon, and then season 2 was, not what we wanted it to be. We have these examples of this, over and over again. And the reason that we were covering this is because we really liked it. And so the purpose was not to, not like it. And so I was wondering, okay, am I being too harsh? Are these things that I wrote down and I'm thinking about, are they not true? And I came to the conclusion, well, no, I think they are true. I think they're valid. And I do hate that. I hate that. But that was the way I was feeling.
I think you brought up completely valid points logically. Sometimes you have to downgrade logic if the scene works emotionally and for a storytelling purpose, because if you try to logically attack any story, Star Wars: A New Hope, you can mercilessly destroy it. What I would say is there some magic in it? Is there some magic in this show? And if there is, sometimes the magic helps us suspend the logic in terms of a pure logical analysis. That sometimes that the logic will drift back into the smoke.
I know. I've said that many times. I mean, I've said that many times on this channel, that we've said that in the event that you have to choose between plot and story, which one should you choose? And I have always said choose story. And most of us have agreed that if you are running into a situation where your plot is just going to have a hole in it, it's not going to work, there's something illogical about your plot, but your story works, then go with that. I mean, we've said that. Absolutely. We've said that.
And Bacon, I wouldn't say just
both.
Right. That's true. And we have said that. I do remember. And Bacon, I don't believe in disregarding logic. But I believe that sometimes there is the perfect fit. Like when you craft a scene, especially once you're like chapter 52, you're carrying all 51 chapters with you into that 52nd chapter. So you really have to process your scenes to make sure everything lines up. Sometimes one or two things aren't going to line up. It's not going to line up. And so it's an imperfect chapter. Do you solve it to make sure everything lines up, which is the ideal, or is the scene good with some minor imperfections? That's what writers are asking themselves. What they're doing here, at least in Act 1, is settling for incoherent or ambiguous storytelling, style over substance, too much to the point where the story is collapsing in some areas. But there's signs that all is not lost. Because I just wanted to say I absolutely loved episodes 5 and 6. I mean, and I loved them. But to Heath's point, they are coming on the back of pretty, in my opinion, wobbly episodes at best. And so I'm willing to forget about the wobbly episodes as long as we can get on with it, with what appears to be really good storytelling, hopefully all the way to the end here, the next 3 episodes.
I'm looking forward to watching the Act 3 and seeing how they conclude this and what their central interrogation is and where they go from this. Because there's also difference between like what would I write and what I didn't want to be like, okay, well, I would have written this and they didn't, and so okay, therefore it's bad. I didn't want what are they trying to say? But yeah, I mean, like to what, going back to what Sable was like what is the key point at the end of season 2, episode 3? Had that been something about the reunification of family, that would have given me a very different feeling of the show, and so forth. And what are they doing? So
but those themes
I don't know where they're going with it.
Yeah, I felt like those themes were completely absent in Act 1, and so you had. I'm going to say what I said even last week. I felt like Act 1. The writers trapped themselves in what they thought was obligatory storytelling. We must show the aftermath. We have to go. But man, if you're slogging through it, then and you have to use a lot of stylization to compensate for your lack of story, then you're making a mistake. You're doing something that's a little off. They should have let off with where they're at now. I think this is much stronger. And I wanted to point out one other thing that Jake Better with Bacon said. The passion for a story like Arcane, and Arcane inspires that level of passion. The same passion that allows me to articulate hours of praise is the same passion that will cause me to call out what I think is some mistakes and worthy criticism.
We've said that before.
Right. Yeah. So it comes from a point of passion. If this was an uninspiring film, nobody would analyze it. Wouldn't even be worth their time. And on the larger point, that is a major part of this channel. That if there's something that I don't like and I don't care about, we don't even talk about it, because there's a lot of things that I think suck, but I also don't care about them. So I don't even bother. We don't hate watch things that oh my God, Doug, do you know about X, Y, and Z show? Do you care? No, I don't care. I hate that. Oh, I hate that thing too. It's gonna be terrible. Let's just watch it and let's just talk. So we tend to only talk about things we care about. So 100%. And by the way, no shame. Like Drune and Fuzz, I know you liked it. Brianna really liked it all the way through. That's great. I'm not mad at anyone who likes what I don't like. I'm not that type of guy, nor is Heath. We like this. Heath and I have disagreed tonight. Me and Brianna and Heath. I think we've had a disagreement triangle through this, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good stuff.
All right. Well, then I guess we'll watch Act 3 I'll watch it on Sunday probably, and then we'll be back with everybody on Tuesday. Tomorrow, by the way, I'm going to be live. We're going to be on the Cultist channel. So on the Cultists, if you're here watching, let me go ahead and give out the Discord server for everybody. Invite people. I will say Discord server. Raven Keep Discord server. That's the place for all of the channels. Raven Keep Discord. I always put out an announcement every time I'm going live. Raven Keep Discord. We haven't been live on a Wednesday in a long time, but over on the Cultist channel, and the Cultists is the channel that is the mockumentary web show that Brianna and I created together. She and I co-wrote it. I produced it. She directed it. We're going to be listening to her director's commentary tomorrow night at 7:00 p.m. Central Time. She did director's commentary of season 1, episode 1. We're going to watch that, and then I'm going to be live after that. And James Bacon may be joining us. We'll be talking about the RPG that we're creating for that. So tomorrow night over on the Cultist channel, go ahead and be part of the Discord. We will be live behind the scenes on the web show, and then talking about RPGs and stuff. So a lot of live streaming this week.
That's great.
And tomorrow morning, I'll be live on the Morning Grind on the Heath Geekverse channel. Another channel. The Heath Geekverse tomorrow morning, we'll be talking about the Fated Edge RPG.
Awesome.
All right.
And
tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, you could find right now Twitter. You could find me. I've got X. X is actually a pretty good. I've been running in all sorts of people on X all of a sudden. I don't know what the heck happened. I used to be impossible to figure out. Now it's getting to be a little bit more manageable. I'm on Facebook. Of course, my website, douglasaburton.com. I will be starting a YouTube channel.
You're starting a YouTube channel.
Yeah. There's more to it than I thought, so it's taking more time than I thought. Plus, I got really busy on my my real job, so that always comes first. So anyway, there's a lot going on. But just to wrap up this, if Arcane season 2 has a good solid Act 3, then I think that's what we'll remember the most.
All right. I agree. So I'm looking forward to it. So I'm going to watch it Sunday early afternoon. So all right. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you Doug for being here with us for the conversation, and Brianna, of course.
Oh, awesome. Loved it.
But it was fantastic. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you to everybody who'll be watching on the replay. It is great having you. We'll see everybody, well, hopefully tomorrow morning on Heath Geekverse, and then tomorrow night on the Cultists channel. But if not, then we'll see you in 1 week for more Arcane. Later, everybody.
Good night, everybody.